Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Spurs Diehards Tottenham Till I Die. We are the show and podcast that attempts to put an arm round the shoulder as opposed to a kick up the arse of our fellow Spurs supporters. Um, my regulars include Adrian next to me. How are we doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Looking forward to getting into it. Yeah, fine.
Good, good. We have Mr. Irish Hotspur, the one and only. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm keeping well. Thanks very much for having me, my man.
Lovely having you. Appreciate it. And once again, we have Mr. Stateside Footy. Steve, how's it going?
I'm excellent. Thank you guys for having me on again this Friday, and it's good to see all you guys, and I'm happy to be here.
It's all good. It's all good. There's a Marvel movie coming up called The Fantastic Four, which is due to hit cinemas soon. But I think it's safe to say we have our own Fantastic Four right here, if I do say so myself. So I will attempt to keep the puns at a minimum tonight. We're going to be discussing the Frankfurt performance. We'll be looking over the team news. We'll be looking at the Wolves away coming up on Sunday. And we'll got a couple of questions for the end. So just have a thank you to everyone joining us tonight. We'll kick off first and foremost with obviously the Frankfurt game, which happened last night, ended 1-1 at the most wonderful stadium in the world, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The team was as follows. Mr. Vicario in goal. Udogi, VDV and Romero and Porro made up the back line. Mr. Bentancur, Bergvall and Maddison in midfield. Son, Solanke and Johnson up front. We also had substitutes of Austin Bissouma, Davies, Spence Gray, Moore, Odegaard, Sarr, Tell, Whiteman and Richarlison. So we'll start off with you, Adrian, being as I believe you were at the game, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll start off with you, being as obviously you were the closest eyes. First and foremost, initial thoughts. What were you? How was the performance in your eyes?
I thought the lineup was good. We started bright. Unfortunately, we shot ourselves in the foot by conceding an early goal. It didn't rattle us at all, though. We kept going. We were bright. And then we got what I thought was a deserved equaliser and looked like we were going to go on and get more, So all in all, I mean, I thought it was a good performance, actually. I mean, fans will be disappointed because they expected us to win and, it leaves us in a precarious situation going into the second leg. But I didn't see nothing out there to frighten me about Eintracht Frankfurt. And I think we can even play better than we did. So we'll see, Well, we got to wait till next Thursday because Angie's job hangs on that, doesn't it? So we'll see.
Yeah, fair play. Dave, what were your thoughts after the match? You've had time to process.
Yeah, look, I thought in general, I thought we played well. I thought it was the best football we've seen in quite some time. I just think maybe another missed opportunity by not maybe snatching that goal to go over to Frankfurt with. And I think it's something that, I've sort of been banging out on about for quite some time, that we just don't have that killer in the front line, that match winner in the front line, and I think that was clear and evident to me last night. Like, we huff and we puff, but we just don't have that guy to be that match winner, to put points on the board. But look, we're still in the tie. That's all we could ask for coming out of it. We still have an opportunity. There's 90 minutes over in Frankfurt. I do worry about us with our away record in Europe the last few years going there. But at the end of the day, football, anything can happen. So I prefer to be optimistic and believe that we can try and do it over there. But in general, just a little bit let down that we maybe shot ourselves in the foot. But how many times have we said that, though?
Yeah, right. Steve, let me ask you. Last night, did we see a team that is slowly starting to find itself again, given the season that we've had? I mean, I know we had a little chat or a little message back and forth on the WhatsApp last night, and you kind of posed to me what I thought of the match. It very much looked to me like a team trying to get to know each other again. What do you think?
It was interesting, right? Because I didn't think we actually started off all that great. Within the first, 6.5 minutes of the game, we conceded one. And it looked like we were a little disjointed to start. But that being said, we slowly got into the game. And that really presented itself in the second half. I don't know what, halftime adjustments were made. But when they came out in the second half, that first 20 minutes of the second half, I mean, they were on fire. And one of the things that was actually encouraging was they were getting quality shots on target. Now, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to take advantage of it, but it's also encouraging to see, considering how this last month and a half has gone. We're lucky to get maybe 3 shots on target for the entire game, and so it's nice to see that, considering a quality opponent like Frankfurt is. So to answer your question, I know I like to sometimes take the scenic route when answering a question, but yes,
No, you're good.
it's your
No,
question.
you're good.
Yes, yeah, for sure. They now it's interesting, right? Because there's still some guys that are working on their match sharpness for being out for so long, and so that's going to take time. But it's nice having that first team back out there and getting used to themselves again, getting a full 90. So yeah.
I mean, you just did bring up, obviously, after 6 minutes, unfortunately, Maddison losing the ball. And I'm wondering if that should say Maddison loses the ball again. Because let's face it, it's not the first time that he's lost the ball in midfield. And it's not the first time that seems to have led to us conceding an early goal. Take nothing away from Ekatike. It was a fantastic finish. But, I mean, I think he had a good 4 or 5 Spurs players round him by the time he actually took that shot on, Dave. I mean, and it's coming from that side again, unfortunately, down Porro's side. I mean, is this just what is there? Can you put your finger on why it seems to take us so long to get started at the moment? Given that 12 months ago, 18 months ago, it was almost like we were too fast for ourselves when we used to start. We used to start and we'd say we blow teams out after 20 minutes and still manage to lose 2-1. But now we seem to be starting slowly and losing 2-1. What's the deal?
I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it, to be honest. It could be it could be a number of things. Maybe the manager ain't giving the rousing speeches maybe that the players need. But I'd argue the players should be self-motivated. Are some of them coming onto the football pitch with the right mentality, right sort of, ready to perform? I mean, how many videos have we seen of them dicking about in the warm-up and playing about in the warm-up and stuff like that? I think there's a load of things that go into it, to be honest with you. Drew, I think when you've got a split in the team or a split in the camp, I think you see these sort of things develop. But look, some could even put it down to nerves yesterday. The first 10 minutes, you could put it down to nerves. But at the end of the day, it's just not good enough. Look, I think that goal is completely avoidable. I think if you're Pedro Porro, you'd be very disappointed in yourself. For me, the job's easy. He's got no support with him. He's isolated. It's just him on the ball. Show him down the wing. He's got no one to cross it to. Show him down the wing. Why does he show him on the inside? He lets him on the inside. And then after that, the effort just isn't good enough from the players to, try and block that shot. And this is where I question, is winning everything to these guys? You got to remember, some of these guys now have had multiple managers in quick succession, and this, I think it goes back to what Conte said. We're constantly looking to scapegoat the manager or scapegoat this. He says, but the players always, they get a free pass all the time. And sometimes I just think it can come down to personal motivation, leadership within the squad to a large degree. When you see heads drop at Tottenham, you don't really see anyone trying to rally the troops, pick them up. A good leader will know, okay, this guy needs an arm around the shoulder. Let me remind him what he's good at and get him going. Or this guy responds to a bollocking, let me dish him one out and let's fire him up. We don't, these are things that are being lost in the modern game of football, I think, in general. I don't think it's just a Tottenham problem, but I think it is really evident at Tottenham. But, you don't have them sort of that vocal leadership on the football pitch, which causes us a lot of problems. But, yeah, look, like I said, I question the team's, willingness to want to sort of push themselves to win. I think at Tottenham, there's sort of this, what would you call attitude that says, we'll just roll out and see how we get on. There's no one that really says, guys, we're going out to win this today. I just feel like that what winning mentality is missing in the club in general. I think everyone's sort of allowed to come in and take it easy. And if you win, you win. If you don't, you don't. I think it's just a poor attitude within the club, Drew.
No, fair enough. Adrian, after kind of getting our act together, 26 minutes in, Solanke with a press, which one thing I will say about Solanke at the moment, he does, he is full of endeavour, shall we say. He manages to find Maddison with the Porro back heel finish. And as you point out in the banner here, that's now 11-11 for Maddison this season across all competitions. I mean, from your point of view, obviously being at the stadium, as we mentioned, the heads. The one thing you can say is that the heads didn't go down, and we were fairly quick to respond, which we haven't been particularly quick to respond to in the past. So, I mean, was there a visible, a visible turnaround from the players, or a visible showing of them not being perturbed by
They
it?
were fresh. They were fresh. This is the whole point. They've come back fresh now, and like, and the crowd weren't down at the 1-0. It was like disappointed, but they were still fully behind the team there. And like, all right, Madison gives the ball away, but you then have to, work out. You have to think to yourself, well, in what phase of play, are we going to hold someone accountable for the goal? Then where's the right side midfield, and where's Porro, has been mentioned? You see, so yeah, it's hard, but we keep making silly mistakes. If you look at most of our goals this season, we've conceded. They're not because we've been caught on the break. Most of them have come in a penalty area. Most of them have been preventable, and like, and no, I thought the team did okay. They're getting back. Until they get back to their sharpness, then I think these errors will come out of their game. You're going to make mistakes, in some games, but not the amount that we've made all season, So, I mean, Madison's been good this season. I mean, like, his numbers are good. We can talk about individual players later, but Solanke made this goal. If Solanke don't press, this goal doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, for me,
chased a lot of calls actually going down there towards the byline.
Yeah, no, fair play. Give me his credit. It's another thing that Steve and I sort of touched on in our back and forth in our messages. And I sort of criticised. I did criticise Solanke a little bit. He was one, and I watched the game a couple of times. I sort of half watched it when I got home. I've actually been suffering from a bit of phlegm and cough and nasty shit, so I sort of fell asleep through the first watch, and then ended up watching the second watch again last night, and then watched the second half again this morning. And the one glaring thing for me, and as I say, I never like to criticise or get too harsh on players. I think you all know me well enough to know that I try and be as fair as I can when I critique players. And I'll let Steve come in on this, and then Dave, because I know they've got, I think, slightly alternate views. But I was just so disappointed with him, and it's not just last night. I think my disappointment stems from since he's come back. I genuinely feel like I've yet to see a ball played to him where he's really looked like he's had the confidence to make it stick to his foot, look up, play a pass left or right. It kind of, I don't know if I'm being really unfair, it seems to falter with him. Like I say, lots of endeavour, lots of huff and puff. He does, he runs and chases after that ball, but is that, I mean, is he just, is it because of the system? I mean, I would like more of a focal point of attack, and I don't know, he just seems to be all huff and puff without blowing much down at the moment. Steve, I'll let you respond to that because, as I say, I know we had a little chat on it last night.
I can understand it. I mean, at the end of the day, right, we paid, $65 million for a guy who's supposed to put the ball in the back of the net, right? So, I mean, this is a results-driven business, and he's got the work rate without the results. So I can understand the frustration, but I also wonder whether or not he's actually a good fit for this, for this system as a whole, right? Because he's asked to do things for Ange Postecoglou that he wasn't doing at Bournemouth. He wasn't asked to press at Bournemouth. He was able just to make runs, camp in channels, and almost play as a poacher. At Tottenham, he's asked to do things that may or may not take him out of position, and whether or not he has the wherewithal to get back into position on the attack. Also, he relies on service in as well too, and I question whether or not he's actually getting the service from his other frontline attackers, right? So I think it's a multitude of different problems that are causing this player not to get his results. But that being said, I guess it starts with Solanke and whether or not he's actually putting himself in good positions. But I think it's a multitude of different problems that are causing this.
Fair play, Dave. For your thoughts on Solanke, because I heard you on another, I think it was Last Word on Spurs. You were discussing him earlier on, and I thought you brought up a couple of good points. So you certainly had some thoughts on him. So I'll let you come back on that.
Yeah, look, when we first signed him, I never really thought he was good enough anyway. I always questioned, would he be able to make the step up from doing it at a club like Bournemouth to a club like Tottenham? Because, there's much different pressures doing it at Bournemouth than there is doing it at Tottenham, especially from the fan bases and stuff like that. Much different pressures. So I've always questioned whether he was good enough anyway. I always thought we made the wrong signing. But I have held back a lot of my frustrations this season to try and give him time to try and prove me wrong. And look, there are elements to his game that he has sort of maybe proved me wrong. Like, he works his absolute nuts off for this team. But it's a sad state of affairs when we are praising players for working hard. That should be a bare minimum at this football club. That should be a standard set at this football club.
Correct.
And look, there has been a lot of times, large parts of this season where he hasn't really got great service. We haven't really fashioned much one-on-ones for him. There was a period there we weren't even crossing the ball at all, and that can become very frustrating for a striker. However, I just think, and look, I also take into account the injuries that he's had this season. He had a good couple of years with no injuries, and maybe he's just a person that could be struggling to come back from injury, considering he hasn't had that problem in his career before he came here.
Right.
However, there's a lot that I'm seeing on the pitch where I just don't think he is the right guy moving forward. No one can put the ball into him and play off him. Like when the ball comes up to him, a lot of the times it takes him 4 or 5 touches to get it under control. And then often when he does get turned on the ball, I feel like he makes the wrong pass a lot of the times or takes the wrong option. And then at other times when he does get turned on the ball, there's times you're screaming, lay it off, the guy's making a run in front of you, and he ends up taking too much out of it, losing it. There's a lot of times I'm seeing him step on the ball and all that. He's just very clunky looking. The last couple of games, there has been crosses getting into the box. Where has Dominic Solanke been? He hasn't been on the end of any of them. And a lot of the times this season as well, I find when the midfielders are breaking out from the midfield with the ball, I often find them very late turning on his jets and getting in behind. A lot of the timing of his runs are piss poor. Now, when we signed him out from Bournemouth, he had some of the most headed goals in the Premier League. That's what we were signing. A guy that relies on service, crosses into the box, let him go and attack it. And I just feel like at times this season I find them underwhelming as well. A lot of strikers in the Premier League, a lot of them get half chances. I just think they take them a lot better than what Dominic Solanke does. A lot of times when I find him in half chances, I find he's striking at the ball very underwhelming. For instance, you go and look at Liam Delap at Ipswich and how that guy strikes a ball compared to Dominic Solanke. You look at some of the half chances that guy's took compared to Dominic Solanke. You look at the way that guy can pick up the ball, get turned, and unleash one into the top corner compared to what we've seen from Dominic Solanke this season. Dominic Solanke, there is so much lacking in his all-round game that I just don't feel like he is the right guy. Also, if he is having problems, it's where he also needs to step up. Go and speak to your wingers. Go and speak to Madison. Players like that. Tell them where you're going to make the run and where you want that ball to go and attack. Go and have these conversations. Don't just slide by and hopefully that it's just going to click and that it's just going to work. But ultimately, I just find I'm starting to find him very underwhelming. Yes, he provides a physical presence, but honestly, when I think when Richarlison has been up front, I think he's done a better job up front fitting in to this system overall than what Dominic Solanke has. The problem is with Richarlison, we can't keep him fit. He's unavailable more than he is available, which means he has to go. But I would argue, I think I've seen better from Richarlison up front than I have Dom Solanke. I just question his all-round game to be good enough. Like, you don't see any player in the team being able to link up with him. And I think that's a problem. Like, when Madison has been a problem at times this season, he's still been able to link up with Son and stuff like that. You've seen Kulu being able to link up with Johnson. Who's Dominic Solanke linked up with this season?
Yeah.
That's a very, very good point. Very good point. Adrian, thoughts?
It makes me wonder if how well we would have done without Solanke's work rate, how much possession we would have given away. I'm not defending the player in the way because I can just recall so many good strikers we've had at this club in the past.
We didn't pay 65 million for a guy to go on the press. Could have given Usain Bolt a contract for half the money.
And in the modern game, teams seem to have one or two central strikers max, whereas back in the day you had four. So, and this is a thing, and I think a lot of the link-up play issue is involved because I think the two wingers, we keep two wingers on the touchline. If Slanky's in the middle, they should be on both edges of the penalty area, in the close space, which is like just nearly outside the box to the left and right. And that's where they should be. And I think we'd create more. I don't think it's working too well with our wingers staying out wide and not tracking back, although Johnson has tracked back a little bit lately. But no, I agree. I mean, all your front players have got to score goals. It's no good having a Messi or Ronaldo on the wings if they don't score goals. You need 100 goals to win the Premier League. That's what you should be aiming at. We haven't. I mean, we're the second most highest goal scorers in the league, but where are we going to score 100 goals? You know, you've got your front three have got to be prolific, and that includes your wingers. Now, for all the criticism Johnson gets, and I didn't want him at the club, well, he's got 16 goals, isn't he, and like 3 assists. So you can't knock him for the goal rate. Then people criticise him because he ain't scored against the top team. But he will. If he's in the positions and the ball comes, he will. He is a good finisher. He'd probably be very disappointed with the miss yesterday. He should have got it on target at least, right? But, you know, he is.
There does come a point, though, against the big teams, though, Adrian, where there's an element where sometimes you do end up having to try and fashion your own chance, where you have to create your own
true.
half a yard.
Harry Kane would make his own chances. Sonny would, in his prime, would make his own chances. You know, they're the players you want that can make things happen. So Solanke's done it once, that game when he cut in on the penalty area, beat 2 men and slotted in a corner. I thought, whoa, that's like Harry Kane. Like,
well, yeah, where is that? Yeah, where's that Solanke? Because I've not seen that. He doesn't
score with his head because in about 160-odd Premier League games, he's got 6 headers. 6 headers.
Steve, you wanted to come in on another point there?
I was just going to back up Dave because I think you're right. I think the last time we saw Solanke actually beat his defender on the counter to get into an advantageous position was, I believe, the first leg against Liverpool, when I think he beat Van Dijk in the ball from Kulusevski, where the ball was whistled offside. I think that was the last time pre-injury that he actually put himself in a good position to make a run to receive a ball.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. I just want to give a big shout out to some people in the chat. Thank you for joining us once again. Loyal listeners. We've got Spurs GCTV, big up, mate. We've got Angelo Tyro in here, Eltel Cockerell, Daniel 90. We have Nita, as usual. Thank you very much for joining us, Nita. Audio Artisan. There was another name in here as well. Mick Vickers wanted to say hello to as well. David Clark, as usual. Spotlight on Spurs. David Clark actually had something that I wanted to bring up here. He made a good point. Our crosses into the box are hit and hope. How many occasions have we seen crosses go out for a throw-in on the other side of the pitch? Solanke runs his arse off, pressing with no help. When it comes to crossing, as a percentage, and I've always kind of been curious about this. I mean, I know kind of runs and plays are looked at in training, and you kind of have an idea of where people are going to be. But Dave, let me ask you, what percentage is it that the winger should be crossing to a target, or how much is it that the forward should be running into a space that the ball's being put in? I mean, does that just come down to play by play? Is that just, do we just have a very bad pair of wingers that can't cross and a forward that doesn't know how to free himself up? I mean, what is it?
Look, to be honest with you, I do think it's a bit of a combination of both. Usually, if you put in a great delivery, usually it does come down to delivery. You got to put in a good delivery. You've got to give them something to go on attack. You've got to give them something to get after. So for me, it always usually does come down to delivery. You can be a striker in the box and you can make the runs towards the near post, towards the far post. But if that delivery ain't good, you haven't a hope of getting on the end of it, no matter how good you are at reading the game and where you think the ball's going to go. Usually it does come down to delivery. But again, this is all stuff that's worked on the training ground. If this was happening on the training ground, Solanke would know exactly where to put himself in the box when Son's crossing it or when Johnson's crossing it. And I wonder, is there much crosses, happening in the training ground and stuff like that, to a certain degree? Because like you look at a lot of our crosses, we are trying to get to the byline and hit low crosses rather than actually swing it in. But I just think there's a lot of times where you see Solanke, Madison, and another player, all three of them running in towards the back stick. Someone like Pedro Porro, why can't he open his foot, put a nice floated ball in, like mix it up a little bit? A lot of the stuff we're trying is far too predictable. You need to be able to mix it up and put balls in from different angles. And we've seen that at times with Porro, but more so when Richarlison's been up front. More so than when Solanke's been up front. But look, Solanke works hard, no doubt about it. But you look at Brennan Johnson, and look, I've been a huge critic, but 16 goals, and a lot of it by putting himself in the right place at the right time, shows it can be done. And, where's Dominic Solanke when them balls are coming across the 6-yard box? Usually you see strikers flying in, sliding in, stuff like that. I don't really see that hunger from Dom Solanke, if you want me to be brutally honest, to try and, throw his body to get on the end of things. But usually, look, Drew, it does come down from the cross. You do need good crosses from out wide for you to go and attack.
Yeah.
To add to
So,
yesterday,
yes.
we put 27 crosses in. I mean, on the eye test, if I hadn't seen the stats, I wouldn't have believed
it. Right.
No.
So Steve,
And
on the back. Well, go on. Sorry, Adrian. I'll let you
I
finish
just
your point.
want to say,
Go ahead.
with crosses, I read a stat, this was a couple of weeks ago, in case it's BS, that said Spurs would put the second most amount of crosses in a game than to I don't know who the biggest team was who's done it in the Premier League, second amount. And this is the whole point of all this horseshoe football, or as you can call it, horse shit football at times, right? Because that's what it looks like. And you watch teams, they all play that same way, and they all there's no one in the middle because people play with one striker. In the old days, you'd have your attacking midfielder surging forward, you'd have a winger coming in at a far post, you'd have at least three in the box when a cross was coming in. And players are not going to hit a ball into a box if they think they've got it a pinpot cross. I mean, when it comes off, what a great goal, the commentators go,
Well, then it would also be nice to kind of qualify based on that stat, because there are so many different platforms that do stats nowadays.
Yeah.
What counts as a cross on Opta might not count as a cross somewhere else. How
It's
far
not even
does
a
the
cross,
ball?
it's a completed cross where that means
Yes.
someone's got on the end of it. They're the ones we're looking at.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Well, so Steve, let me just on the back of this, what we've been talking about, on the right-hand side, you've got, or at least last night, because to be fair, I don't want to single out players, and to be fair to Odegaard, he's one of the only players that we have that will really kind of try and stand his man up. But last night we had Johnson, who typically won't take on his man, very rarely gets to the byline, and very rarely do we see him kind of put in low drilled crosses. He also doesn't stand up his man and place in early crosses. You've then on the left hand side got Sonny, who rarely goes to the byline and uses his left foot to cross.
Yeah.
Usually comes in on his right and either squares if he runs out of space, or will try and take a shot, or will overrun the shot, play out to the opposite side, the ball gets recycled again. So based on that information, and what you said earlier, do we have a striker who, regardless of the fact that Ange said he was his man and he was who he wanted, is he just not quite fit the system yet? Does the fifth system need to be adapted, or is it a case of everybody just needs to play the system more and the kinks will figure themselves out?
That's a great question. I personally think there are two different types of players. I think there are universal players that are good enough to fit any adaptation of football of a coach wants to play, and then there's guys that are typically I guess your traditional number nines. That's a very good question. I would like to think that he's adaptable, but that being said, I mean there has to be answers to these certain questions. Certainly. From my standpoint, in order for Dom Solanke to actually be effective, he actually has to have service now, whether that's centrally or through off the wings. If you're not getting consistency, you're not going to find consistency. And I think I realize that sounds a little simple, but it is what it is. I mean, you're only as good as the guy that's willing to put the ball in an advantageous position for you to go get. So from that standpoint, I question whether or not this team has adequate crossers. That's the first question I'm going to ask: is are these guys actually working on their craft day in and day out to get better? Are they pushing themselves to reach that next level? And that also goes for the collective as well too. Are they committed to get runners forward? More oftentimes than not, especially on counterattacks, this team is slow. This team slows it down, effectively killing their attack. So really, are they committed to actually getting numbers forward, or are they committed to slowing things down and cycling the ball back again, sideways back, and trying to find an outlet in?
Yeah, no, fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what, because typical me, I did go off on a bit of a tangent there about Solanke. We'll go back to the minute-by-minute play. We'll run through these real quick, and then we'll go over, what we thought of the team as a whole and just some stats at the end of the game, discussing performances. So the second half was obviously better. You felt players were getting into the game a little more. 55 minutes, the Bergvall strike. He made three players look a little bit silly. If that goal had gone, if it had gone in, probably would have been up there with contender for goal of the season, I would think, at least in the European or the Europa League. 56 minutes, Son went close. Santos, who, again, another one of these keepers, another like Tim Krul moment, right? The backup keeper has an absolute blinder against Tottenham. You can't write this crap.
I do think that Son shot, though, was at a decent height for a goalkeeper.
It was. You would.
If he could have lifted it a bit more.
Right. Yeah. I guess if that had been against us and it was Kinski, you would have expected him to save it, right? So yeah, that's a very valid point. 57 minutes, corner, Bentancur, and me, I've got things to say about Bentancur. I'll keep it to myself for tonight. But he does have an ability to get on corners in the box. He is a menace. So I will give him that. I'm not going to complain. But on any other night that goes in. 59 minutes, another Santos save from Maddison, the left-footed shot. I don't remember this one being crazy. Did I miss this one? Was this like an excellent save, or was this like a savable?
Do you know why it was a good save? Because there was bodies in the way. Bodies were flying across them. That's why I think it was a good save.
All right, fair enough.
It was a brilliant move by Maddison to create his own space and actually get a very good shot on net. It was actually brilliant of Maddison.
Cool. Then 63 minutes, Ekitike to Brown to Bahoya. And he hooked it over the bar. That was one of those ones where you think to yourself, if this goes in, we're going to be, you got 20, 25 minutes of us huffing and puffing. But thankfully, over the bar. And then we had the three substitutions, Safa, Maddison, Spence, Udogie, Tell for Son. We will touch on that in the game management. We had a Spence cross, and this was almost carbon copy of Johnson against Southampton. If anything, a little bit further out and the angle was a little bit tighter. But if you could have swapped and had Southampton's finish last night instead of last night's finish, you probably would have, to be fair. Again, we'll touch on this because I'm not quite sure why it took so long, but it did. Richarlison for Solanke in the 88th. And then in the 19th minute, we had the Porro free kick. Bentancur heads across the box. VDV header bounces, and I think actually ended up deflecting off of his own foot and kind of bounced over the top corner. So I think Santos got his hand to it. I think it was going over anyway. So we have the stats 56 to 44, shots 10 to 4 total, on target 6 to 2, fouls even 14 to 15, corners 9 to 2, tackle 1, 88 48 percentage, clearances 18 to 16, interceptions 11 to 8, total passes 526 to 414, which is a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be, but because usually we kind of, although we flatter to deceive with our passing, it's usually a bit more sideways than front to back. But, pass accuracy 93 to 87, and then crosses 27 to 11. But again, how many of those were completed and, dangerous crosses is to be determined. So, Adrian, we'll start with you. For you for a minute. Performances, Vicario, what do you think?
Vicario's just Vicario. He's solid, isn't he? He's a very good
Mhm.
goalkeeper. He didn't have much to do. But
Could he have done anything about the shot and the goal?
if see, if a goalkeeper sees a player moving on his right foot or whatever, and if in a split second, if they're instinctive and they see him just shift his body weight, then you get an idea. You should have an idea which way he's going to shoot the ball. Then you can take a yard to your left or right, and perhaps do better. It just looked too easy, didn't it?
Yeah.
It looked too
I mean,
easy.
I guess in his defence there was a bit of
It's
a
in the
crowd,
corner though.
Yeah.
but it was very much in the corner, right? But yeah, Vicario. I mean, other than that, like you say, pretty solid. Anybody have anything else to add about Vicario?
And I tell you what, it was good. It was good to see him come and claim crosses in the game, because he did. When they pressed us a few times, he did come and he was determined to get them. You know, sometimes he fists them, right? And you never know where it's going to go. But yeah. No, he's a good goalkeeper. I mean, like,
I don't know, man.
Really
I watched that. I watched that Ekatike goal at least 4 or 5 times, right? And I was looking at Vicario's feet, right? I wanted to see his positioning just to see if there was any hesitation before he dove, and it looked like, at first I thought he might have been out of position, but after seeing that, 4 or 5 times, it actually looked like he was spot on with his timing to try to get over to get that ball. It just really was a good finish.
Very good finish.
It's one of them. It's right in the corner. I think his reaction after was right to go and berate the players. That's preventable.
yeah.
James Maddison losing the ball from Pedro Porro
exactly,
on the inside and from the 4 players,
exactly.
in front of him. His reaction to it was right to blame the players in front. You've got one guy nowhere near. How's one guy skinning 4 and 5 of them and putting that in the bottom corner? You know what I mean? And the fact that this guy, we come into this game, we spoke about in the pre-match build-up how, dangerous this guy was. 19 goals already coming into this game. As soon as he gets the ball, there should be an urgency to go and close him down. You know what I mean? And that's what worries me. But I don't think that's Vicario's fault at all. I think that's the outfield players being very hesitant and backing off.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, but he cut inside on his right foot, correct, Dave? The question is, why was he allowed to cut inside to get on his right foot to begin with?
Yeah,
right?
That's one of the big problems with Porro. He's constantly looking for help. I almost feel like he allows him to cut inside, hoping someone else comes across and helps him, rather than actually deal with it. Show him on the outside, eliminate the danger. There's no one to cross the ball into the box to. So if it does, he's giving it straight back to us. So he's not going to do that. He's going to turn. The best he gets out of it, throw him. But at least you get players back. The situation's snuffed out. You show him on the outside. It is piss poor from Pedro Porro.
Yeah. I can see a scenario as well, especially with this guy Ekatike. It's going to be one of those things. The summer's going to come. I can see a scenario where Isak goes for silly money from Newcastle to somewhere, and Newcastle pick this guy up for about 35, 40 million. You watch. It'll happen. And, and in that same universe, somehow we get priced out of it. Why is it that something like that would cost us 65, 70, and yet any other club will pick this guy up for 45? Mark my words, you can clip it. It's going to happen. Big up Dermo, THFC till I die. Dave, Udogie. What did you think about Udogie? Because he's been getting some flack. I've been in a couple of WhatsApp groups where a couple of people absolutely losing their mind about this guy, saying he's saying honestly some quite awful things. And I think to myself, he's come back from horrible injury, didn't really have a pre-season, been thrown into it, then picked up another injury. He's in a squad that's not really playing too well. He's in a decimated defensive line. I thought he did all right last night. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I think when it comes to Destiny Udogie, I think there's a lot of maybe recency bias in some of the arguments people are trying to make about him. Like you said, they forget about him not having a preseason. They forget about him being thrown straight into it, expected just to get straight up to the speed of it, pulls an injury, and then straight again. At the end of the day, it's not his fault. The club have took 2 years, and it could be even longer, to sign another left back. When he went injured last year, after I think it was 24, 25 games, and then the problems we had trying to fill that position, that should have been one of the first things on the list this season. this summer, but it wasn't. And the fact that we came into this season relying on him to come straight back in unfit is absolutely unforgivable, and we have not helped his situation whatsoever. People actually forget how good this guy was last year. Now, I do think with the emergence of Jed Spence down that side, I do think Destiny Udogie is maybe being exposed a little bit in possession. And what I mean by that is you go back to that Chelsea game, the amount of times, Son's trying to play 1-2s with him or Madison, and that first time pass has just been given away because he can't do it. So I do think he's being exposed a little bit in that area. But last night, in general, he was decent in that area to a large degree. But yeah, look, I thought Destiny Udogie played well last night. Don't get me wrong. I still think there's a massive difference when Spence is down that side linking up with Madison and so on compared to Destiny Udogie. Like, for instance, I thought the first half, a lot of people were moaning about Son not really being in the game. But that's because at any time, Destiny Udogie would move the ball on, he was running in beside Madison, bringing players over, cramping up that space. Same with Son. If you actually look in the second half, he stayed back. He allowed Son to be one-on-one with his guy. He allowed Madison to be one-on-one in the midfield with his guy. And spaces started appearing. But in the first half, he was cramping that by bringing players with him into their spaces that they want to operate in. And that is an area where he does have to learn and learn quickly. Because if not, he will find himself back behind someone like Jed Spence, and it will be a long way back because Jed Spence doesn't look like he's getting there. He's going backwards anytime soon. So I would say, as much as I feel sorry for Destiny Udogie and how we've treated him and abused his body to a certain degree, I do think he has to realize quickly he needs to be a lot better in possession.
Yeah, fair play. Steve Van der Ven.
Man, I got love for Dutch defenders, man. And this is, he's dude. I'm firmly in, Team Van de Ven right here. And but that being said, it's going to be a process, and we saw this last year as well too with Van de Ven when he came back from injury. It took him a little bit to regain his sharpness, and that's where I think we are right now. This is going to be a process where we're gonna see times in different games where he actually looks better, and then there's going to be times where you're going to have those Freudian slips. I think overall, I think his best attributes are when we're pushing forward. For me, I think Romero's the better central defender as we're building out of the back. But as the build up moves up the pitch to the midfield, where he's good on the ball, and he's able to hold up that back line and be able to do what he does, and his strengths are being able to break lines with his passing. That's going to come in due time. But I actually thought yesterday he was actually very good. I don't know how you guys felt, but that being said, his ability to track back, there wasn't really one time where anybody was trying to test him with balls over the top. So that was actually very, very encouraging as he gets closer back to his full sharpness.
Yeah, I think one of the most encouraging things was the fact that he got through the 90 minutes. I mean, I know there was a minute at the end there where I thought I saw him sort of looking like he was cramping up a little bit, but apart from that, and there was a couple of interceptions that he made and a couple of tackles where he just oozed class. Like
there was one where he hooked his leg backwards,
just kind of got himself between the ball and the player, and he was just took it away and just kind of glided.
I think there was a sequence in the second half where Frankfurt was moving forward, and they got into the box, and there was a nice little silky pass that freed up a runner. And then right before the guy took a shot, Van de Ven got right between the shot and the goalkeeper, and it ended up deflecting out of bounds. Right, Van de Ven essentially came out of nowhere to keep the game level. I mean, the dude's positioning in the box is just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. It's so good to have him back, and the hope is, the cotton wool thing, or the analogy about the cotton wool. Hopefully, it's only a temporary thing. I think
there's always going to be an element of that with him, though, Drew. But
that's the sad thing, Dave.
Once you have so many hamstring injuries at such a young age, it's very hard to. It is something you have to maintain over your career. Now, I know that he has been seen to see an expert, and they are working on changing his running style, which they think will alleviate the amount of times and the pressure he's putting on his hamstrings with his current running style. So they are in the process of trying to change that, and they reckon that will help alleviate the hamstrings.
Right.
Fingers crossed. We can hope.
he's going to be able to play in this type of up tempo attack, right? Traditional Dutch football, they don't make they don't make those runs forward to the midfield and then have to track back as much as he's being asked to do in this current system. So it's going to be interesting.
I would hope. Yeah, I would hope that I don't know that he is such a good player, and so. I mean, not even just that he's so integral to the way we play. It's just a joy watching him play, right? Just the way he does things and the way he does things. I would hope there'd be some sort of compromise where we can maybe drop back a couple of, just to drop back a few yards and maybe tell him to just go at 90%, 95% and not actually hit 100. And maybe we can just hit a happy medium. I mean, I would take, I don't know, a 90% fit VDV is probably better than most 100% fit centre backs, I think. But then we are dealing with percentages, and unfortunately, you can't get wrapped up in the love for somebody if they're going to only be available 50, 60% of the time. So fingers crossed, touch wood. Hopefully, he's seen the back of any real major issues. Adrian.
On the Udogie thing, I thought it was his best game in a Spurs shirt this season, personally. I thought he was good. Yeah. And it's important because when you look at VDV as well, coming back, he's slotting in. You're coming in. When we were playing well, those two guys, they know each other's games, right? They know when to stick or twist. But when you're both coming back for injuries and you're not in form, then players could go on the field with a little doubt about each other in their minds. And that can affect the way they play their game. They're not going to play their natural game then. Mm-hmm. You might eventually be sitting back too much, be too deep, play out the back too much, or you might be hesitant going forward. I mean, VDV doesn't make too many rampaging runs forward. Romero makes more. But, no, I mean, we all know that Udogie's a fantastic talent. We all know he has been piss poor this season. Let's be fair. He's been piss poor. We can critique him because he has. But as we know, he was injured. He didn't have a proper pre-season. He was thrown in, as Dave alluded to. I wanted a left back and Eze. I wanted Dorgu and Eze big in the season. Get them two. I'm happy. I didn't know Spence was going to come back in. I didn't know if he had a future, right? I still think because we've seen Spence play so well on the left, people want him there. But when he played against Arsenal in the Cup on the right, he played well. And believe you, he can play well on the right. It's on his natural foot on his right-hand side. He should be even better. It's just that he can cut in because he's on the left, can't he? Onto his right foot. So more invert, exactly, right? So, no, I mean, and I thought, VDV was solid, and I just think Romero's made such a big difference since he's come back. And he's far underappreciated by the fan base because VDV's the sexy defender because he's fast. I bet if you took all the stats over this season and last and compared them, the only thing VDV would beat Romero on is pace. Because I think Romero's even better in the air than, because for his height, VDV, he needs to improve his heading, and sometimes his positional play is suspect. But he's young, you know what I mean? I ain't hammering him. He's young. I'm just picking out things where I think he can improve his game on, and that is positioning, especially when some of the goals were conceding on the left, when Udogie's been poor as well and got caught, like lack of concentration or whatever. No, so, Yeah,
what I will say is, though, I think we're missing a trick with Romero and Van de Ven trying to, who's better than the other. At the end of the day, we should be looking at it as a partnership. That's what Toby and Jan were, a partnership,
100%.
And that's what we should be viewing it as on a pitch. I would make the argument Van de Ven isn't as good without Romero, and Romero isn't as good without Van de Ven. You listen to the way Van de Ven speaks about Romero, a couple of times since he's joined Tottenham, how much of a partnership they are. He always speaks to them as a partnership. So I don't think we should get wrapped up in, or sell this one and keep this one because he's better, blah, blah, blah. They're a partnership and they're rare to find. They're hard to find. Look how long it took us to replace Toby and Jan's partnership. And I actually don't think they've got enough praise the last couple of games. The last couple of games, especially the other night, and I'd argue against Chelsea as well. They stopped the ball at source higher up the pitch than what our other centre-back partnerships have done. They're not getting enough credit. Last night it looks easy. Yeah, we controlled the game. But when we forced them into kicking the ball long, who was it turning that ball over on the halfway line or just below the halfway line and getting us going again? It was Romero or Van de Ven, and they're actually not getting enough credit. People go, oh, sure, they didn't have anything to do. That's not true. Every time they went to kick it long, when we put them under pressure, they had to deal with it, and they dealt with it very well. Romero, little cushion headers, Van de Ven, little cushion headers out to the fullback, taking down the ball. You know what I mean? I don't think they're actually getting enough credit. People go, "Oh, it was easy." It was an easy night for them last night. Didn't have much to do. It's not the case whatsoever. If they weren't making them headers, and intercepting them long kicks over the top by the goalkeeper and stuff, then they would have had a field day. I think they deserve a lot of credit, and I think we should speak about them as a partnership rather than individuals.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Just to correct you, mate, I'm not being hypercritical. I watched the game on Spurs play, and the under-17s won 5-2, not 2-1. They won 5-2. Okay.
There you go. Adrian, I guess we've just touched on him really. Romero, I mean, just as far as last night's game.
I hope he stays. I mean, I really hope he stays. I know with players, with fan bases, players are Marmite. It's always subjective. Half of them like this player, half of them dislike that player. And if there's a mistake made on the field, they'll always blame the player they don't like, especially if it's the player they like.
I'll be honest. I just don't think we recognise quality. I think there's a large degree within the fan base where we protect bang average players and make every excuse to keep giving them opportunities. But when it comes to a good player who has ambition, people almost get offended by it. And they're like, he doesn't want to be here, get him out the football club. And then we moan that we don't win trophies. I mean, if you want to win trophies, the whole idea is you keep your best players and you build around it. You know what I mean? Having ambition isn't a bad thing. In fact, I want players in my club that do have ambition in winning trophies. You know what I mean? Like this whole argument, sell Romero. Honestly, I think we're walking into the Harry Kane situation again, where people are like, oh, it's okay, take the 100 million for Harry Kane. With all these fanciful ideas. We paid the price ever since we've let him go. We paid the price last night by letting him go to a large degree. You know what I mean? And I think we're going to end up doing the same with Romero. We only realize what we had once it's gone. I do think we take our best players for granted and that we protect. When it comes to, for instance, in the past, the likes of your Lo Celsos and Ndombele's done fuck all on the pitch for Tottenham Hotspur. Yet every summer, keep him, give him another opportunity. This is the season, blah, blah, blah. As soon as it comes to Romero, let him go. It's madness.
No, that's a very good point.
Not only is it madness, but when you look at professional sports nowadays, are winning championships and trophies high priorities for players? Maybe, maybe not. But what is their priority, right? And especially if you have the respect of a guy like Christian Romero, who is a world-class defender, he wants to be paid top 10 money at that position. That is the motivation to be taken care of for at least a 5-year stretch and to maximize his prime when to maximize that prime. And he's with Tottenham Hotspur right now, right? So if this is an issue of an extra $20,000, $25,000 a week on his weekly wage, then you pay it. Then you pay it, and you don't think about it for the next 4 years. And you're absolutely right, Dave. You build around him. You don't just be like, people have this perception that he's not about the badge, and it's like, well, dude, what generation are we playing football in? It's like that. The loyalty to the badge has really not been a thing for about 15, 20 years now, especially as salaries have continued to move up and up and up and up. That has become the main priority for these players. They want to be taken care of.
And
no, absolutely.
Can I just bring up Daniel Knighty's comments? I'm not going to have a go hang on. And I just want to, he's took the time and effort there, so I just want to sort of, respond to it. But, look, I understand what you're saying, Daniel, on this one. But you put yourself in someone like Romero's shoes, or even Harry Kane's shoes 2 summers ago. I do think they love the club. I think they appreciate the fans and stuff. But when you're seeing when you have ambitions of winning trophies, and you're seeing players come in from the Korean League and stuff like that, that's where these players go, oh, they're not matching my ambition. And this is where I say it's on the club to bring in players that when these players' contracts are coming up and they do harbor these ambitions, it's up to us to match them and go, right, we better bring in better quality players to keep them. Like when you hear about the class of 92, like Sir Rio Ferdinand was in Ferguson's office every summer. What players are we signing? Because they genuinely want to know, so that they know they're at the right club to keep pursuing their trophies, keep pursuing their ambitions, and that the signings coming in are matching them. This isn't a new thing in football. This has always been the case. But that's where it is over the club to start recruiting better. Like, I'm not being funny, but the recruitment we're making is not going to win us trophies. It's just not. I'm sorry. And this is the thing. We should be looking at the likes of Romero's and putting pressure on the board and going, Bring in players to change his mind, make him stay. At the end of the day, if we pay him the right money and we make the right transfers and he can see us building the path to winning trophies, he will stay. That's my opinion on it anyway. That's the whole reason why Harry Kane left.
Well, this is my
he's-
concern. Like with as much as I enjoy, Mateus Cunha, he's been a joy to watch at times this season and last season. But I'm concerned, to your point, Dave, that this summer that we're going to end up walking into the same issues we had last time. When I see us looking at players like Cunha, like Ryan Aït-Nouri, the left back, like Tyreek Mitchell, all these sort of lower half teams, end of the contract, relegation fodder type players. And to Steve's point, when you've got somebody, a world class player like Romero at your club already, if it's for the sake of 25, 30, even 50 grand a week, I mean, it's professional sports. You do everything you can to keep that player there. I mean, unless you're the Dallas Mavericks and you actually just want to shoot yourself in both feet and never be able to walk again and trade the likes of your Luka Doncic to that sort of stuff just doesn't happen. Everybody that has a good player wants to keep their good player, and money talks. So yeah, I mean,
Like, we're literally becoming a feeder club for the big clubs. We were like
Right.
that before we built the stadium. When we built the stadium, we weren't supposed to be this. But that's what we're becoming. We're buying all this talent, putting all the hard work in to develop them. We get them to a certain point. They harbor ambitions to win trophies, and we go walk away. They go on and win trophies elsewhere, and we're like, how many times have we seen players do that? And I'm absolutely fed up of doing it. They're doing what we want to do, but they can't do it in our club jersey. We bring in one world class player, and we almost expect that one guy to be the catalyst to win us something. It's more than one guy on the football pitch. It's a team effort. You need solid. Like, not everyone has to be at the same level, but everyone has to have the same ambition. You know what I mean? And for me, it's a huge problem. We almost get one player, he develops on the verge of becoming world class, the big club circle, and then all of a sudden, they take the benefits of all the work that we've put in, all the resources that we've put in, all the time on the training pitch that we've put in, all the hours that coaches have put in and stuff like that. We just go, there you are, thank you very much, we'll take the money. And then we reinvest it, and it takes another 4 or 5 years for us to really sort out the problems. I'm fed up with it. I just don't want to be that club anymore. When we when we have good players, I want to keep them and build around them now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. On that note, good players. We'll carry on with the performances. Porro, Steve.
Yeah, please.
Porro? Go on, Adrian.
No,
Yeah,
Porro.
He's
an enigma wrapped in a puzzle, isn't he? Because when you evaluate a player like Porro, you've really got to do it at the end of the season to see if he's actually in that game for you. He scores a wonderful goal yesterday.
No.
Yeah, he's caught up fielding out of position or fault, or partially at fault, depending on who you want to blame when we consider. And for all the raving we've done about our defenders being so great when they're in form, look how many goals we conceded this season from poor situations, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know with Porro. And then people say he should play as a winger. He's not a winger. Maybe a right-sided midfielder at best or something like that, but he's not a winger. If you want to shield Porro and absolve him for too much defensive responsibility, I'm going to wait to the end of the season. I mean, and it's not far away, but would I be gutted if we sold him? I think he's a technically superb footballer. And he can cross the ball. So because he cross the ball, does that make him super sexy? I mean, I want more. I mean, he needs to up his defensive game. When he first came, them games away at Newcastle and Leicester, he was crap, wasn't he? And then he get caught and balls over his head on the far post, or he wasn't standing goal side and wingers were running down. All right, he got pace and got out of some situations. I'm just I think people get, like Dave alluded to earlier, I remember when Serge Aurier was there, he'd have 3 or 4 bad games. He'd have a good game and the fans were all lovey-dovey with Aurier again. And then he'd have a couple of average games. Oh, he's not too bad. Then have poor games. Oh, get rid of. And then he'd have a good game again. And they're all lovey-dovey about him again. Make your fucking mind up, right? Is the player actually good enough? Is the player going to take us forward? With Porro, no. I like the player, but unless they can find a way to suit him to me, no. I'd rather go Udogie and Spence. I really would at this moment. But he'd be brought in a game like yesterday because we're going attack. We are going all out attack. Unless you fix that. If you were playing two holding midfielders, that would be a different game. Then you could guarantee the right-sided midfield would be able to cover him. Maybe he'd look a lot better. Maybe he would look a lot better. If your wingers played more inside, not alongside the striker, but say if the striker was central on the outside the penalty area and the other two were at the far edges of the penalty area, then Porro could overlap, do more overlapping. But
Right.
I just don't know. I mean, he's a very good footballer. He's technically superb, but I don't know. I mean,
No.
I don't know. Do we get a net gain out of Pedro Porro?
Well, Steve,
Yeah.
let me ask you. As good as he might be offensively, as bad as he possibly is defensively, is Porro the recipient of a formation and a style of play that he's being asked to do that he just cannot do?
Well, I'm glad
Is this partially on Ange?
Well, so here's the thing, man. I've spent the entire season defending Pedro Porro because when you look at him, you see the talent. You see the talent that he possesses, and then you wonder whether or not he checks on or off when he's tracking back or where he's in 1v1, 1v1 defending situation. And then I asked myself, okay, well, wait a second. How would he look if he was in an Oliver Glasner type of system where they use true wingbacks? They have double sixes in front of a back three, and it's more of a community defending type of situation because you already have that guy already back, filling up space that actually is going to allow Pedro Porro to get back and be in a position where he's going to be able to defend, but he also has other defenders in space picking up runners. And I asked myself if that type of system would actually be a little bit beneficial, where it actually allows him, the comfortability of attacking without necessarily having to put pressure on himself, not only to track back but also be accountable in 1v1 situations. So, to me, I can continuously ask myself if I'm just defending the guy entirely way too much, or is he really just that crap? I don't necessarily think he's that shitty defensively. But that being said, there are certain times where he's left on an island, and I just don't necessarily think he's got the ability 1v1. I think he does need that extra defender back there. And sometimes, like yesterday, yesterday was a very good situation, or a very good points to that, because that ball came over the top and it caught him out, and he had to make that decision. And he decided wrong because he just assumed there was going to be Romero there to step up and kind of fill that void, which wasn't there.
Also, I'm very hesitant to, we said it with Dom Solanke, we say it with Johnson and other players. Oh, the system. I'm not being funny, but when we've had Kane and Son down the years, we never had to have conversations about system for them guys to fit in, and that's where I do question some of the quality of the players. You know what I mean? I think if you've got quality players, they can sort of execute any system to a large degree and what the manager's asking them to do. But when it comes to Pedro Porro, and this is why I'm very hesitant to blame it on Ange and the system, is because people forget, there was an interview he gave just not long after where Postecoglou came in. He said, "Look, I've never been asked to do the defensive side of the game. I have to go and learn it." He said that. That's out of his own mouth in an interview that he gave. He's at Sporting, he played right wing back. He didn't one of the best teams in the league. Didn't even have to worry about defending. He's got 3 defenders there across the back line to cover him. 2 holding midfielders there as well. Same with Man City, and that's sort of why they let him go in the end. Because he couldn't really do the defensive side of the game. That's why they ended up selling him. Look, I think we've got one of the most technical right backs in world football, but I think there's a case of Trent Alexander-Arnold about him. It's like, he gives you one thing going forward, but defensively, he's always going to cost you a goal. He's always going to leave a chance for the opposition. But that's why I'm hesitant to blame Ange. At the end of the day, Pedro Porro said he has to go and learn the defensive side of the game, which means the club knows that. Why not go and sign another fullback then? Knowing that it doesn't already
Spence can do it both.
Right.
Dave, Spence can do both. He can attack and defend.
But I would argue I would argue, like, I know there's a bit more of I know the difference between a wing back and a full back is, the defensive side of the game. But I'd argue a good player can adapt from wing back to full back. It's not a massive change. You're not asking them to go from centre back out to full back or from midfield or winger out to full back.
I guess the reason that I brought up maybe it being potentially something to do with the system and potentially to do with Ange, and I have to, just for clarity, everyone, I have to ask the hard questions, right? But the reason that I brought it up was just because this is the first time in my footballing life that I think I have seen a right back have to cover space and be running from almost, he's so inverted sometimes. And the way that they set up, and I'm not saying, I don't hate it. I wish it worked a little better. I wish they'd had time to perfect it, because it puts me on edge, to be honest. But when we've got Romero and Van der Ven, essentially the only two players in our half, and instead of having Porro and Spence, or Porro and a doggy kind of wide out here, Porro's like almost centre circle sometimes. And the problem with us is that when we lose the ball and we have to, we're not good in the transition, right? I think everyone said that. So when we lose the ball, he is so ineffective because he's been asked to push out so much and then invert so much. He has to recover from so much ground. And I guess that was my question, really. Like, why?
But this is where I think the use of number 6 comes into it, though.
Because then he drops down and then
under Pochettino, right? The both fullbacks went high.
Right, and the 6 would drop, and then the centre back would split.
When Yana would use that player, he would drop in, make a back 3, and then Vertonghen would go out and cut out what came down the left, and Alderweireld would go out and cut down what's out right. With Bentancur, he's not asked to do that. He's asked to sort of sit in front of him and get a bit further forward as well. If he actually adapted that would actually give us a bit more cover to allow your fullbacks to go and affect the game. This isn't new. This isn't revolutionary. Everyone goes on like it is. But people forget, under Pochettino, them fullbacks were high and wide. Danny Rose and Kyle Walker were high and wide for a lot of the game. Even in the North London derby, I was there, the 1-1 where Hugo Lloris saved the penalty last minute. Most of that game, Trippier was spent high and wide. So was Danny Rose. And the reason why a lot of managers trying to employ that is to keep their wingers pushed back, and stuff like that. So it's not new. It's not revolutionary. But it's that midfield that doesn't cover it, that allows it to happen.
Question for you then, Dave and Steve. Porro scored a lovely goal, right? Nice back heel. Why isn't one of their forwards scoring that goal?
Yeah, that's true. That's where Solanke should be.
Why isn't one of our Well, Solanke made the goal. He ran it down. He chased the lost calls and made it. But he should just be down. Where's the other? Where's Sonny and where's Johnson? Why isn't one of our forwards scoring that goal? Because it just shows you, if Porro don't score, we lose the ball, we're exposed down the right again.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Very good point, Adrian. You've stumped all of us with your footballing marvel. I tell you what. Well, let's move on, just because obviously I'm conscious we're already over an hour. Say big up to Blaine, Mr. Super Spurs TV. Always good to see you
and
in
David
the chat.
Clark, regular.
And David Clark. We'll move on to the midfield, which was obviously Bentancur, Boval, and Maddison.
Opinion on Bentancur than yours right now, Drew.
What's that?
I don't want to hear anyone else's opinion on Bentancur right now than yours. Because you have been not a heavy critic. I think you've maybe pointed out that he's not as consistent maybe as myself and Jack make out. But last night he was brilliant.
100%. 100%.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me, being as I've let you guys wax lyrical about the defence, I'll take Bentancur. He was very good last night. He had a game. That's the sort of game that I expect. And there were still flaws. There were still a couple of times where he gave the ball away. He had more time than I think he thought he had. But yeah, that's the sort of That's the level he's put in my head that he should be at week in, week out. I think anything less than that, I think
See, I
I think
understand the
Ben,
criticism now that you've said that because you hold
yeah,
him to a higher level. It's not that you
yeah,
think he's bad.
and no, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing with Bentancur as well is he's one of those players where I feel like he's almost like, in a race car where you can spread the ratio of the gears and you can have shorter or longer spacing between gears. I think Bentancur, his 8 and 9 is excellent, but the difference between, I don't know what it is. I don't know whether this is just me and I've got a weird thing about him, but the difference between his 7 and 8 and his 8 and 9 seems to be bigger than other people. Like his drop off, maybe that's what it is. Maybe just when he's not on it, it feels like he's glaringly not on it. Like when he tries too hard, and it almost feels like you can see in real time him kind of losing his head a little bit. Like he's been guilty of a rash yellow card when he shouldn't have. There was a couple of times, I can't remember if it was the Villa game or the Liverpool game, one of the ones where he just went flying in for a tackle that he
Liverpool.
didn't need to go in for, gets himself
Mm-hmm.
booked for the next game. And you're just like, Jesus, man, like, come on. Like, yeah,
Mm.
I do hold him because I think arguably he's the elder statesman of the midfield, right? He's the one
Do
that
you
should
think
be
it's a
there.
case that he's just not a number 6? Because in the Conte midfield, I know he played too, but Højbjerg
Mm,
was the one that sat back a lot more, and Bentancur was the one
right.
allowed to go forward and affect the games. And that's where he earned a lot of the reputation that he did with amongst the fan base, was because he was pretty good going forward and affecting games and stuff.
Yeah, and there's an argument. Yeah, you're right. I think he did have a tendency to be a little bit more fluid and in the transition kind of made a few more things happen. Like I think he had more license to go, right? He was on the edge of more, on
Mm.
the end of a few more chances. Certainly had a couple more goals to his name, although, we just said earlier you could have had at least a goal last time with the header off the bar. But yeah, no, I mean, when Bentancur's silky, he's got every right to give. I think you give him the moniker Benton class, and absolutely, he is a classy, classy player. So I just think,
I don't.
uh,
You know what's
you know,
interesting though?
yes,
I
Steve.
don't. It's interesting, right? Because when Betancourt is surrounded by a full first team where there's no pressure on his shoulders and he's actually has the flexibility and the freedom to actually create, he's a very good player.
Yeah,
When we were dealing with our injury crisis and he was actually asked to lead, he kind of shrieked in some of those moments, right? And so
Mm.
I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I'm willing to die on this hill. I think he just enjoys being another player, where he doesn't have to worry about pressure, being I guess being a leader. He can actually just go out there and just play his style of football within the confines of what he's being able to ask to do. And I think we saw that yesterday, right? So I don't know, like I I like Betancourt. I actually think that he's a great player for this first team. But that being said, I think there are just different moments that he's just not comfortable being in.
How much
yeah,
is it of him coming back after having so long off the football pitch and training pitch? Though like he spent a long time.
Correct.
He had the suspension, a couple of injuries, then he came back, had the concussion and stuff like that. How much of it is that we were maybe expecting him just to come straight back and then be that guy, rather than actually giving him a bit of leeway to get back up to speed? Because when you're out of it for that long, match sharpness, getting up to match speed and stuff, that is a
right.
real thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For
I
sure.
mean, are we guilty, Dave, though, of allowing that to be a reason for some players and not a reason for others?
Like who? Give me an example.
Um, I mean, there's
Say
an
it.
argument. Well, I mean, I guess earlier on there's an. I mean, I guess. Well, no, it's because it's a
Because I
shorter
did raise the
time.
point with Solanke, I did raise the point with Adogi about the injuries. Now, I like to think I am pretty fair with it to a certain,
Yeah,
to a large degree.
yeah. I mean, I just think that there's been occasions where there have been players that have taken longer than we would have liked to have gotten back to it, but I don't know. I guess I don't hear that. And I was just posing
Yeah.
the question. I don't
I
necessarily
think
know if I
I think for
believe
an
it or not.
ACL injury, I think he's come back and done well. He's very good at
Yeah,
Brentford away. And then there's times when our midfield's crumbled in front of him.
Right.
And like you think, well, come on, who's
But
helping
this
out?
is the thing, Adrian. I expect him to be good at Brentford
Yeah.
away, but I want him to be good at Chelsea away. And
What I've liked to see, and what I wanted to see for a long time, which hasn't happened, we're actually playing the same midfield in 2 games, so they get used to each other's games.
Right,
And that's what I think it's helped. I think that's helped Bergvall as
100%.
well. Right?
100%.
Well, I think there's also there's an argument of the last
because our midfield's been pants this season, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think with this, and there's been good signs coming for it. It's far from ideal,
Right.
but there's time. I think when I do question Bentancur's discipline, you do. He's got 8 yellow cards, 4 in the league though, and if you're disciplined and you've got a disciplined midfield, he does go wandering all over the pitch. Now, that's fine when it works and he looks good and he looks sexy to us fans because he's a fantastic talent, right?
Yeah.
When it goes wrong, our midfield just looks so disjointed and lacking in cohesion, and when we have problems. And then, he might look good and we concede a goal because we got our midfielders. Well, I think we should play with 2, not a 6. I don't like these numbers 6, 8, and 10, these modern Ponzi narratives, right? Descriptive narratives.
You'd prefer a double pivot, would you, Adrian?
No. I call them 2 holding midfielders. We should play.
Oh, 2 holding. Yeah.
2 holding midfielders. I mean,
well, I'll tell you what. We'll move on because I think
central midfielders.
I've said enough about Bentancur. I think if he can keep that sort of level for the rest of the season, then I'll be happy. Dave, I know are you still all right? You got to head off?
Yeah, go on. We'll keep going.
Yeah. Keep going. All right. We'll let you choose. You have Bergvall or Maddison. Which would you like?
Do you know what? I'm gonna give Maddison a go. Look, I have been a critic of his for at times this season, and again maybe the same reason as you as Bentancur, Drew, is because I do think there is a player there that can grab the game by the scruff of the neck a lot more than maybe what I see him do at times, and especially for large parts of this season. But I actually thought last night he played pretty well. One thing I think he is developing to his side of the game, and that I said he needs to bring to his game if he wants to survive in this team, is that nastiness, working back. He is starting to do that a lot more. He's starting to throw his weight around a little more. Even last night in possession, I thought there was some wonderful turns, evading his marker in the midfield and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, he got caught for the first goal, but like I said, that was preventable. But in general, some lovely little turns. And I thought Maddison had a good game. It was him that set up Dominic Solanke's chance, or Porro's goal. I know people credit Dom Solanke for the ball or for the run, but Maddison still had a lot to do. He still had to beat his man, pull that cross back and stuff like that. He done very well on that. I think last night he had a very good game. I actually think it was harsh that he was taken off to a certain degree. And, where I sort of had my gripe with it to, a little bit is that we brought Maddison in to be that guy that unpicks the lock in tight games, be that guy to find that ball, for us to go on and get that winner. But every opportunity that comes around, Ange hauls him off. He doesn't even give him that chance to shine, to prove that he can do that. You go back to Chelsea again, hauled him off. There's games earlier on in the season, he's done the exact same thing to him. He hasn't really given him that chance to prove that he can be that difference maker. With 5-10 minutes to go in a tight game, he keeps pulling them off. And that's where my problem comes in. That's exactly what we bought Maddison for, right? To be that guy. And he keeps taking them off and not giving him that chance to prove it. So for me, that's where I feel like, because don't get me wrong, earlier on in the season, I maintain, I think there was a massive falling out between Postecoglou and Maddison. I think to a degree, calmer heads have prevailed and, they're willing to put the differences aside and make it work. And I think, Maddison is putting the effort in. I can understand where the rumour came around in the first place. You go back to that Brighton game where we were 3-0 up at half time. His effort to try and stop some of the Brighton counterattacks was nowhere near good enough. And I think that's where the rift came in. But since then, I think Maddison has gone away to doing what Postecoglou wants him to do. So I do think then, now Postecoglou needs to sort of extend the olive branch and say, do you know what? I'm going to put my trust in you to be that sort of match winner, to be that guy to find that ball. And that's where I feel a little bit sorry for Maddison to a certain degree.
And what was good, Dave, was that instead of Maddison coming back and picking the ball up off the back 4, Bergvall was doing it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Bergvall's more further forward, right?
Yeah.
But it's also
sorry, go on, Steve.
I was going to say, but it's also a little disrespectful too when we're clearly seeing Sonny and Johnson as the game wanes into the later part of the second half, their energy levels start to spike and their sharpness drops and their finishing ability drops, and yet yet they stay on the field, and Madison comes off, right? And especially in a game where you absolutely have to win, you have to give yourself an opportunity on that second leg, and Madison comes off. You're absolutely right, Dave.
Well, Madison and Son came off, didn't they? Because it was Udogi came on for Spence,
That's
Madison
right.
for Sarr,
Yeah.
and then Son for Tell. And I guess my only, and just as I say, but just because I like to keep the conversation going, my only kickback to this is, and because I had to look at this afterwards, because I was watching the wonderful Irish Hotspur, I believe it was Twitter Reacts this morning.
Yeah.
And I made the point with Jack, because Jack said essentially what you said. And I did have to kick back a little bit, and I even did a real-time fact check because I wanted to make sure that I was right. And I counted 3.5, 4 if you're generous, chances after Madison and Son went off. There was the Johnson that got blazed over the bar. There was a Tell cross that ended up, or should have been, a corner that wasn't. That was very, very dangerous.
But that's not a
There was
chance, though, is it?
no, but it's a half chance. I think because it's a player that's replaced a player, and it was a dangerous ball into the box, and it was the more dangerous than anything Son had produced in terms of a cross. I just think, all right, not a chance, an influential piece of play, I think, or what could have been. I think there was also a Solanke where he managed to get into the box, and that was it was a very, very tame square ball. But I mean, there were attacking efforts that continued to happen after they'd gone off. And I just think when you've given them 80 minutes and they've given everything, I think if you'd taken them off and we'd ceased to be an attacking threat, then I think that argument completely holds water. I think the fact that you took them off
I know what you're arguing
and
with,
we
Jack.
were still kind of continuing to attack, I think the argument is like, well, they huffed and puffed for 80 minutes. They couldn't do anything. We've still got other players that we've at least got to give the impression are part of this team. So I don't know.
Get what you're saying on that. Look, I'm not here to defend Jack. I think the difference between mine and Jack's opinion is, I think Jack was saying, that we didn't really create too much after we made them substitutions. And that's where you came in with yours. But for me, where I see it is, right, essentially the gamble was, especially with the Son one, keep Johnson on, that he's going to bury that one chance that comes his way. He didn't. And for me, where I have the gripe with the substitution is we brought Madison in to be that big game player. We keep taking him off rather than giving him that opportunity to prove he can do that in them moments. Son, notoriously down the years, has been a big game player for Tottenham Hotspur. As many goals as Johnson does have, he hasn't shown up in a big game for Tottenham Hotspur a lot of times this season. And that's where I think it was the wrong decision made. If you know your players and you know your squad, yes, he scored goals like that this season, but he hasn't done it in any big games. He hasn't arrived in any big games. Last night, I thought his performance in general was quite tame compared to the game at the weekend against Southampton, which does allude to the notion that he doesn't turn up in the big games. And for me, if you're a smart manager and you know your squad, I think you keep Son and Madison on, knowing that they are your sort of big-time players, rather than take the gamble on someone like Johnson, where it was always going to be a 50-50. But if you look at his goal scoring stats, like, we can go to Transfermarkt and check them out now. So what are the people inside the club doing? That information should be readily available, and going, do you know what, with all the stats and all these people that they're trying to bring into the game now with these iPads, surely someone has gone with the percentage of Johnson scoring in the big game is 0. Take him off. And then not only that, but I would argue when he took Son off, Son was starting to grow into the game. Johnson was fading out. He left Johnson on after there was a ball put out to him, no one around him. When he went to control it, it went 10 feet up in the air, come back down, took a shit touch and another touch and ran it out of play. Straight away, he should have been hauled off there and then. You're talking about composure in a big moment chasing the game. That's what he's doing with 10, 15 minutes to go, when most other players, one touch, put it in the box, there you go. And for me, I just think that's where the manager needs to know his squad, and that's where I have a gripe with the substitutions. Johnson is not a big game player. Don't get me wrong. He sort of changed my opinion on him a little bit this season. Where I've sort of evolved, and I've gone, do you know what? There's a role for him in the squad. Someone that scores 16 goals, there's a role for him in the squad. But he is yet to demonstrate he's a big game player, and that's where I have my problems with the substitution.
Yeah, with Maddison, for me, I mean, like quality player, squad player. I think he's got a bigger opinion of himself than we as Spurs fans have seen greats at this club. He's a very good player, but he's a squad player, and one thing he does do, and other players don't. He takes risks. He does try and make things happen. And Pochettino used to say that I've got nothing against my players taking a risk in the final third. But players nowadays, they're so risk averse. I think they would just want to have good stats at the end of the game or something. Like I didn't give the ball away or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, you've got to take risks in the final third because defending is such a fine art nowadays. Otherwise, if it wasn't, you'd have a lot more goals scored in games. Even teams like Man City at their very best, they still struggle to beat teams and went away and lost to Sheffield United. So it shows that defending is obviously easier than it is to attack and score goals. And you need a Maddison. And it's all right Decky being creative or even Bergvall to an extent, but it's a different style of creativity they bring. With their energy is more of energy and thrust, or Maddison's is more with subtleness and class, elegance, right? And so we need him. And we need to keep him for next season. I'm sure he will be here as well, because and fans, they're entitled to their opinion. If you don't, I mean, I like the player and I've critiqued him. I'll say if he's had a bad game. I'm sure Dave will. All of us will, won't we? We'll critique him.
I'd be the first.
David Clark
one.
David Clark's from Leicester. His family are Leicester fans. He's a Spurs fan. I think David's got a picture of Maddison by his bedside table.
Oh,
I was accused of having one Vlahovic by my bedside table by Daniel 90. So,
Steve, you want to take any of the front three? Your Son, Solanke, or Johnson?
No, not really. No, I'm just playing. I'll just take them. I'll just take them as a front three.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Probably do that then. Yeah, that's probably easier.
Yeah, because I mean, collectively, I definitely wasn't impressed with any of them. Really, I mean, I can appreciate Solanke's work rate, but that being said, as a collective in a big game, to start the way that they started. Especially Sonny, considering he's been around, he's played in big games, especially in the Champions League. He understands the moment probably better than Solanke and Johnson. But to see the way that these guys started, not necessarily getting on the ball and confidence, not necessarily attacking with gusto. I don't know, man. I was a little disappointed the way they started. Now that being said, in the second half, it was a different story. I actually liked the way that Sonny was trying to approach things 1v1. But that being said, overall, as far as I was concerned, I don't know what the mentality of these three were on as a whole. Clearly there's something different when you're playing against a team like Southampton, where you kind of you understand that you have an advantage, where you can actually just come out there and use your talent to a certain extent to be able to find a result, get a couple goals early, and then be able just to kind of have that momentum throughout the rest of the game. I don't know if that was the case yesterday, where they just felt like they had an advantage, but clearly as this game started in the first 30 minutes, as it progressed to halftime, I don't know, man. I just felt that they were somewhat disjointed yesterday. Now, again, it changed a little bit in the second half, Dave. But that being said, overall, I don't know, man. I just don't understand exactly the mentality you bring into a game like that, knowing it is one of the biggest matches of your season, and to come out with that that sluggish. I don't know, man.
I also think, when you look at the Frankfurt manager's words after the game, topsoil, whatever you want to call him, he sort of spoke about, stopping Son coming in on his right foot. That was his main focus all game long. And I just wonder how many other managers have done that this season, where the whole game plan is show Son on the outside, don't let him come on the inside, because that's where Son's threat is, cutting inside onto his right boot. And, I wonder, is that Son's biggest problem this year, rather than him actually, falling off it? I think everyone agrees he's lost maybe a yard of pace. But, is he just being doubled up on? Are they executing the game plan, purposely stopping Son, knowing if they stop him, you've got a great chance of stopping Tottenham? Because Dominic Solanke ain't going to pick up the ball, beat a player, and put one in the top bins. Neither is Brennan Johnson. And I wonder, is that the problem that Son's coming into? Because it's a problem that we haven't faced. Because in years gone by, we had Harry Kane. Everyone's initial thing was stop Harry Kane, which actually left Son free a lot more.
Correct.
Because the main focus was to block up the middle. Now, you're not actually seeing teams do that. You are seeing teams getting out there quick to Son. As soon as he touches the ball, 1-2 players out there looking to stop him cut inside. And I think that's the problem we have right now, is that we don't have another top player in the forward line that teams really have to worry about. And if I'm an opposition manager, straight away, I'm saying, you stop Son. Don't worry about Solanke. He ain't going to cause you a problem. Same with Johnson. He ain't going to skin you. Stop Son. You have a great chance of winning this game. And I think that's what we're seeing play out this season.
And they're not playing to his strengths, Dave, are they? Or Johnson. When we see him pass the ball out to her wings, every time I see it, it's very frustrating. They've both got their back to the goal, so they've either got to go on the half time or pass the ball back. Most time they pass the ball back. When you see the best of Son, it's like at Ipswich. Gray hits the long ball through, he's running onto it. When Bergford put the through ball through at Ipswich, he's running onto it. If you know that, why aren't you doing it in training? Don't give him he needs to be running onto the ball. And when he does make a run, when we're taking a goal kick or whatever it is, when he does make a run, no one finds him. Or no, we need to take a chance with a few balls. Most of them don't come off, but a defender might make a mistake. It's like putting a cross in a box. It's not always to score a goal. Defender might make a mistake, but it's the same with Sonny. We need him running on. He's best when he's running on, you'll find that he does dribble and take his man on down the side, because he's got that short little burst of acceleration which gives him the confidence right to take his man on. But to stand up and take a player on, he's no Gareth Bale or Eden Hazard, so he's not going to do that, And
we sold the player that done that for him all the time. The player that put him in behind all the time was Harry Kane. We sold him.
Yeah.
Mm.
But we also saw that in the Southampton match where Sonny did actually get a ball over the top and he was making his run. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, his defender was able to get angle on him, right? Effectively pushing that ball to the side of the net. Now I don't know whether or not he's lost a step, but that being said, for a guy that has that creativity to cut in, you also had Solanke running in as well too, right? Mm-hmm. So there was multiple options for Sonny to go, even if he wanted to cut in and put one on. But unfortunately, I think Dave just alluded to it. Maybe he has lost a step, because generally speaking, 5 years ago, that defender doesn't catch up.
Mm. Yeah. Well, Sonny's never been a player that will get you a goal every other game. He's a striker who scores goals in clusters, and then he doesn't score for a little while. He's not like Harry Kane every other game or 2 games out of every 3. 2 goals out of every 3 games.
Why did everyone think he was going to be that guy, though? Because everyone said he's going to be that guy. He'll take the mantle up when we sold Harry Kane. Everyone said he was that guy. Everyone. Well, not everyone, bar me and about 10 other people. But
when he shared the golden boot with Salah, he scored 17 league goals. This year he's got 11 goals and 11 assists, right, in his games. His numbers aren't bad, but on the eye test, he hasn't looked great at all, has he? He hasn't looked great. Then he could come out. But this is where the fans that criticise him be loving him. If he comes out and scores 2 goals against, well, he won't play against Wolves, in my opinion. But if he comes out and scores a couple of goals and we win the game at Frankfurt, he'll be everybody's flavour of the month again, Doug.
Oh, we're fickle. We just want to win games. Honestly,
if he's lost a yard of pace, he's got so much close ball control, and only loses it at a time. But then rely on overloads down the side. Every team that league, this is why you haven't got wingers out there that take players on, because it's all been coached out of them. They rely on overload. So you get the ball and you slide the ball past the last defender and have your player, your fullback or your winger running onto it. That's what it's all about, overloads all over the pitch, playing out from the back, through the middle. It's all about
the individuality is coached out of them now in academies. It's all about systems and stuff like that. If you've got any sort of individuality, you're seen as a risk now, whereas back in the day, everyone was clamoring for someone with that individuality. Actually, I think it's a problem, a football problem in general. I think Roy Keane and Gary Neville tried to highlight it after the Man City game. It didn't go down too well, but again, they touched on again at the latest episode of the Overlap the last 10 minutes, that now in football, there's no individuality. A lot of players are struggling to be brave in possession. They're all taking the easy pass out. And what's driving them mad is that goalkeepers and centre-backs and defenders are having more touches of the ball now than your forward players and your midfield. It's becoming absolutely head-wrecking. They're saying it's actually become a very stale game in England, a very boring game, a very sterilised game, right now. They just, a lot of people are starting to say it's a very boring game. We're starting to see it because, like you said, it's all about, tactics and overloads and runs here and runs there for different reasons, rather than actually focusing on, right, this guy's great on the ball. He could play all these passes. So what do? You run off him, you run off him, you run off him, you come short, you create a decoy, something like that. But now all that's gone. All of that's gone. And honestly, it's driving me mad.
Well, and a lot of that has to go to modern coaches these days that are married to certain systems.
But they're all trying to play the same way. Even coaches aren't individual anymore. They're all trying to play the Guardiola way. No one has their own style, their own way of managing anymore. Everyone's just copying the next guy, the guy that's more successful at the time now.
And most managers are more concerned about saving their asses, their jobs, and that's why they introduce a style of play that's like boring, basically. It's boring.
Like for instance, Ange Postecoglou is married to his system, right? There is no room for flexibility with the style of what he plays football, and because of it, certain players have to fit a certain mold in order to execute in his system. Where a guy like Thomas Frank, who has publicly come out and said, "Hey, listen, there's a difference between playing a team like Bournemouth versus a Big Six team, and we adjust to the opponent of which we play, because playing one way might work against Fulham or Bournemouth, but if you try to do it against Tottenham or you try to do it against Arsenal, you're going to get run off the pitch, right? So there's no flexibility, i.e., there's no room for flair. There's no room for players.
Everyone's adapting the Man City the way of playing and mentality, but without actually having the players and the financial backing to get the players to be able to do it. It's absolutely madness. Like, the thing is, I can understand that maybe the top 4, top 6 teams having their own, having a style of philosophy and that they want, because they should have good enough squads. It doesn't matter what you're coming up against. You should be able to beat them. But lower teams down, the likes of Southampton coming up, playing out from the back, playing the one way, it's just absolutely madness. People moan about teams not surviving, but how are you supposed to survive when you're trying to play like Man City? But you're buying a 10% of what they can afford. It's absolutely madness.
Yeah. Well, also to your point, Dave, just in terms of was Son ever going to fill the void in terms of goals? 23 is his highest, right? He's got a couple of 17s, but more often than not, he scores 12, 13 goals a season. So, yeah, to your point, he was never really going to be the one that filled that void in our front line.
Well, in order to fill the void, you essentially need him to up his output, not continue on the same. You need him to up it.
Exactly. Right, exactly.
Well,
so
that's
we just
what
touched on
happens.
there.
I was going to say that's what happens when you try to recreate Harry Kane in the aggregate instead of actually, replacing a guy, replacing a guy almost like for like, if there is another guy in that type of caliber that allows Sonny to continue to play his style of football, playing off that dude's shoulder. Just saying.
Well, exactly. That completely shoots down my because me and Dave have been having a little back and forth. Just a jovial one. Yeah, pretty much all season about whether Harry Kane had been replaced. And when you say in the aggregate, you make a very good point. Like, I get, there is an argument that across the players that have been bought, they've sort of somewhat replaced his numbers, but you can't ever replace Harry Kane and what he does on a football pitch. So yeah, you were never, unfortunately,
it's the
without
it's the
go on.
I was going to say it's the Moneyball way of doing business, right? Where if you lose a player of that statute, you can try to find 3 or 4 players that fill in the void number wise, and on paper, it's supposed to replicate that type of production. But you just said it right there. There's no way you can replace that type of leadership.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just touch on the game management quickly, because I think we kind of sort of went over this. But we had the Udogie, Spence, Maddison, Sarr, Sontel. They came on with about 10 minutes to go. Solanke and Richarlison Solanke for Richarlison, sorry. So he had about 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, that just goes to show potentially how fit he really is. Anybody have any significant thoughts on this? I mean, Dave, I know you were kind of, you didn't necessarily want Son or Maddison to come off based on who we had I tell you what, let me put it to you like this: based on the substitutes that we did have, which are this little lot, who would you have rather seen and when?
No, look, I think that the players that he brought on, I'm absolutely fine with. It's just the players that he
Okay,
took off
okay,
is where my problem comes in. I just think, look, I know Bergvall had that shot, but you go back and look at a lot of Bergvall's last 10 minutes in games this season. He gets reckless in possession. He gives away a lot of fouls. I think that's and to a degree, the last 2-3 minutes when you're chasing the game in injury time, he done the exact same last night. And I think that's
right,
where again, your squad, you haul him off, and that's not because he's a bad player. It's because of tiredness. You got to remember he's
yeah,
coming from the Swedish second division, and he's
hmm
acclimatizing to the Premier League. Complete different animal, complete different pace, strength. For me, that's a game where you just know your squad. You see these patterns, and you go, right, he's got to come off. I
right,
also
right,
think to a degree, Brennan Johnson should have been the one hauled off. Like I explained, I think, look, he took the gamble leaving him on for that one shot. But like I said, he hasn't proven he's delivered that in a big game. And that's where,
right.
again, and I think, there was a period, don't get me wrong, I think Johnson, there was a period in the second half where he was becoming better. But he did fade out, to the last 10 minutes. He didn't offer an awful lot. And again, I think that's something
Yeah.
you've got to recognize. You've got to recognize when Johnson is on it and when he's not on it. When he's on it, you keep him on. When he's not on it, you haul him off. And that's so for me, again, like I said, it's not the players that he brought on, it's the players he took off is where my issue comes in.
Okay. No, no,
He
no,
won
that's
no
fair enough.
problem. He pulled up with cramp. That was going to have to happen.
Yeah. So we're saying that arguably Udogie for Spence, we'd have done what, Sarr for Bergvall, Tell for Johnson, and then
Yeah.
Richarlison for Solanke. Yeah,
I
no,
would
that's
have made the
it.
Richarlison one 10 minutes earlier. I would have given him at least 10, 12
100%.
seconds.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, cool. Anybody any different to that? Because I think we're probably all in agreement. I think that would have been the way I'd have played it if it had been my FIFA career mode.
Well, the interesting
Yeah,
thing
I
is,
think the
Ange Postecoglou has a set time, and usually when he makes his changes, which is usually right at the hour mark, give or take 5 minutes, and that's generally when he makes the the bulk of his substitutions. And I thought we were going to see this, considering we have a match on Sunday as well too, and that seems to be the continuating way he operates match in and match out. And I understand why he left them on. Because at that point in time, they were chasing that second goal, and they were smooth in their transition, they were smooth in their buildup, and they were attacking the net, getting quality shots on target. So I understand the reason why he left them in. You don't want to disrupt any type of continuity in the attack, but you can see it right around the 70. Like, it seemed to me like right around between minute 68, minute 72, you kind of started to see them, getting very leggy, especially when they were tracking back, and that was the time. And I 100% agree with you, Davis, on the Richarlison factor. Bringing in a guy in the 80+ minute to finish out the match, you're not getting anything out of him at that point. But that being said, as much as I do love Bergvall, and his week to week improvement has been impressive to watch, but you're chasing a match and you're taking off your best creative central attacker. And the move to make in the midfield is Sarr for Bergvall, because you want to bring on other like-minded attackers centrally as well too. That being said, it should have been continuously right at that hour mark. You're still going to be able to keep that momentum and that continuity within the midfield and in your attack as well too. And I thought, and I understand why he did it. I just didn't necessarily agree with the time, and I don't know, man. I think that was, I think leaving them on and getting to that point of exhaustion actually took a little something away, because we didn't see it again until the very end of that match as those subs started getting into the game.
Right.
I think we can be certain that the 4 taken off won't be playing Sunday, and that they'll play.
For sure.
Really, those will be really fresh for Thursday away to Frankfurt. I think that was part of it as well. Because I think you can say it's certain that Richie starts against Wolves. Like, I'm sure you'll come into it, but I don't think any of those four of those. But I don't think Bergvall, Son, Madison, are going to play.
I mean, I think you only see Richie start when you're guaranteed to have at least 45 minutes in his legs, because you don't, like I say, I think we had this conversation a couple of weeks back. You don't play a player
as well. So I could see Richie started and Scarlett coming on. I mean, if you can't play him in these games, when are you going to play him? If you can't play him,
I get it. I just think for
no
a
points
confidence,
left, there's no risk. Look, I don't want to lose any game of football.
I get it,
you know,
Adrian, but
if
you don't see somebody, and it's very rare that you play somebody that's only got 35 minutes in their legs in the first half and have to sub them in the first half, because usually a substitution in the first half is a bit of a faux pas, isn't it? It kind of leads to I've done something wrong. And
yeah,
if he hasn't got 45 minutes, if he can't make it to half time, I just don't think you put him through the scenario where you have to take him off after half an hour. It would be safer to bring him on for the last 30 minutes if you think he's got 45
well,
minutes in
then you
his legs.
start
Well, he
with
can
But
still
Scarlett.
play Tell up front, though, right? And then bring
You can
Richarlison
play
off the
Tell
bench.
up front.
yeah,
You could start Scarlett.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
are we
most
thinking, well, I'll
fans,
tell you what, are
I
we?
mean, most fans wouldn't give a shit. Don't give a shit about Wolves game. I mean, like they
This is
don't.
true.
All their focus, because Andy's job is on the line Thursday, right?
Right.
And so, all right, we won't want to lose, because you still have a meltdown if we lose anyway at Wolves, right? But
If there was a on the scoreboard at the game on Sunday, if underneath where it says Wolves versus Tottenham, if there was a little bar that lit up that showed how much money was going to be made if they won that game, would that make any kind of difference? And I'm just, I say it flippantly, but there's 3 million a spot in the Premier League, and for all intents and purposes, everything coming out of Tottenham, especially when it's been put to Ange over the last few weeks, like everybody thinks that the league is a write-off, and I've said all along that so long as you're not risking anybody injury or fatigue to the point where they can't perform in the next game, is it not incumbent upon everybody associated with the club to want to finish as strong as possible in both competitions? And I say that because if this was a scenario, and maybe it's unfair for me to suggest this, but if it was a scenario whereby we were pushing for a title and a cup, you would like to think that everybody would be giving as much as they could to finish as high as they could. So why should that, like, just from a personal pride point of view, why should it be any different, just not wanting to finish as high as possible?
it shouldn't be any
Anyone?
different. It shouldn't be any different. But I can see Gray and Davis playing at centre back against Wolves. They've done all right when they've played together this season. I can see Gray getting a game. He hasn't played for a while, so I can see him getting a game. You can see Basuma getting
You
a
can
game.
see him. You can see him changing both centre backs, like doing that much of a change.
Yeah, because Thursday's that important. And
Wow.
as Davis hasn't let us down this season at centre back, Gray only got a bit of a hard time against Delap against Ipswich. Apart from that, he's done okay. So I could see them two starting. Will they? He might go Romero and one other. VDV's definitely not starting that game. Not while we're still unsure about him.
Do we know how far the positions go down the league as far as Europe, and whether it's actually mathematically possible for us to?
Well, we're already
Because if
guaranteed 5 Champions League places due to the coefficient next year, because the English teams have done so well. So
Right.
what you've got 2 or 3, is it, for Europa League? If you win either cup, you've got to be in Europe, the FA Cup and the League Cup, right? So it's got to
doesn't
be.
it? FA Cup's Europa League, and League Cup gets you Conference League, to my understanding.
Okay. We could, in theory, go down to about 10th, but we don't want Conference League. Look, let's just.
The thing is,
I don't think we can have that attitude, Dave. What do you
the
say?
thing is, look, I agree with you. Like, we shouldn't be sitting here going, we control games of football. That shouldn't be the attitude. We should be trying to win every game. But we should be also able to make changes and expect, if we've got as good as a team as everybody thinks we do, then we should be able to make changes and still go and win games, right? That's what a squad's for. If we're making changes and we automatically think we're going to lose, then the squad ain't good enough and the players ain't good enough. So that's why you got a 25-man squad, because you got a load of games every season. You got multiple competitions to juggle, and it's up to you to fill that 25-man squad with the best talent you can, so you can juggle them, so you can make changes and stuff like that. Every time we make changes, we shouldn't be sitting here going, "Oh yeah, we're throwing the game." No, it's not. You're resting players. You are prioritising midweek 100%. But you should still be able to put out a good squad to be competitive and try and win it. You win the game. If we want to be competitive, we want the challenge, which is I think is what we all want here. No, so if we don't believe if we're making changes and it's not good enough, then the players ain't good enough.
I mean, it could
Can I just add? I guess, does it make a difference the fact that Romero? I know we're doing the whole cotton wool thing with VDV, but does it make a difference the fact that Romero, hasn't played that many games this season? I mean, if he says he's fit, if the coaching staff say he's fit, I mean, would you not? I mean, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that he would play. Maybe not VDV, but do you not think there's a chance Romero still gets a start?
We know that centre backs do the least amount of running in a game, and even VDV only has to do bursting runs now and again, not that many during a game. So they should be able to play more games. And when people are complaining about Romero playing for Argentina, I'm thinking, hang about it, he needs the game time in his legs. Right. You can't have it both ways. He needs to play. So I've got no qualms about Romero playing Sunday. He may well play with Davies, right? Which is probably more likely than Gray playing. And Gray might then step into midfield instead of Bentancur. But does Madison play? Midfield, who plays? Well,
I don't know.
Angelo, Decky is still. He trained, but he's still recovering from injury, so he's not going to be available. They said he might play a part next Thursday, and Danzo as well is still recovering from his knock, so there's no word on him just yet. But
Ange's always played with injuries. When we played Chelsea at home, I mean, no one expected VDV and Romero to start. And he said, "Oh, they're a week or 2 weeks away." Well, then I always picked up on the week part of that, right? Because he says about Decky might get some minutes in his legs against Wolves.
Yeah, you never know. Just quickly, everybody, thank you once again, everybody in the chat, much appreciated. If we can say a big up to Dave, Irish Hotspur, he's going to have to dash off, but I really appreciate you giving us a couple of hours of your time tonight. You can find him over at the Irish Hotspur, and you can see him amongst other shows on the pre-match on Sunday for the Wolves game, which I will be delighted to join him for. What else have you got coming up, Dave?
Just Sunday now at this point, pre-match and watch along and see how we get on. I've a family thing that I need to be at tomorrow. That's taking up most of my day, so I won't be able to do anything tomorrow. But I'll be back Sunday. But look, I want to say I've actually really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been, a great 2 hours. It's actually flown by, to be fair. So, anyone that is tuning in, if it's your first time and you haven't, frequented these parts before, make sure you smash a like and make sure you smash a subscribe, to the boys' channel here. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Dave. Much appreciated. Yeah, we'll definitely have you on again as a returning favourite. Thank you very much, sir. Enjoy your weekend. We'll chat to you Sunday.
Actually, quickly, sorry, I do have something else tomorrow. I'm on Steve's at 11 before I head off on my family thing. I'm over there for an hour tomorrow in the morning. So, that's where I'll be for that.
Well, in that case, you can get over to Steve just here. YouTube at the Stateside Footy 27. Banner ready to go. So you'll catch those two gentlemen tomorrow. Well, we've still got a couple more things to go over. We've been going for hour and 53 minutes, so we'll go for maybe another 10.
Our channel a plug for those who still with us. We've had 70.
Drew, though, I do have to say, regarding Sunday, that I go in the other direction. I don't think it's a game where we will see heavy rotation, just considering the pressure that Ange actually is under, because he actually has to finish. He actually has to finish the season strong. So it is the league is a priority. Not to mention that Wolves have won 3 in a row, and they're actually a very tough team to beat at Molineux. Now, I understand it's just Wolves, but that being said, I don't think Ange can afford heavy rotation in this match, even knowing that Thursday is around the corner. I would not be maybe a few changes. I would probably assume Jed Spence might start in that match, which makes a tremendous amount of sense. But that being said, would I be surprised if we see our starting back four in the same midfield three? Maybe Pap Sarr might come in, but for the most part, I still expect a strong lineup come Sunday morning.
Yeah,
No, fair play. Fair
it's
play.
just a thing that you wouldn't want it to happen, but knowing Spurs, if you lost a key player through injury against
Oh, I
Wolverhampton
understand.
or a Solanke, then you can imagine the outcry. You know, I agree. Look, we've got nearly a fully fit squad, barring Danso, Dragerson, and Decky. So in theory, it should be a strong team no matter what. Anyway, I just don't see Bergvall, Madison, Son, and Solanke starting this game. I mean, Romero, as I said with centre backs, they do the least amount of running, right? So I
Right.
can see Romero starting, and I can see VDV out of that. But it doesn't mean to say we won't. You know, we won't. It's just then a question of because then you can give Gray a go in midfield with you can bring Basuma in. Come on, let's see if you
Well,
have.
I was just
but
going to
that
touch
being
on
said,
that. What do
well,
we think about this? Because Blaine's mentioned this. Says, lads, I don't think Ange sees Gray as a midfielder now. The players are fit. He's not getting a sniff. And you just mentioned Gray. You think he's going to potentially get a run out of Molineux this weekend in a
Yeah,
position?
I do, because especially if he rests Bentancur, Gray will play. They're different styles of player, obviously.
Right.
You know, which means Basuma. If Basuma plays, in theory, instead of being the sort of the holding midfielder, he'll get a bit more license to go forward and make things happen. And it's a question of who plays as well. I mean, then in midfield, because if Decky's anywhere near fit, you know, so you have two options with a player, really. You either bring him on late and you bring him on for half hour and you found that, oh, look, he's got more in his legs because he is a super fit guy. You could last, or you start him in a game and you let him play until he runs out of gas and he might last an hour.
Right.
So this is why Ange gets paid the bucks, maybe for not much longer. But I mean, like,
one way or another, he'll be getting paid one way or another.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we've seen Archie Gray play in his traditional role a few times over the course of the last couple of weeks, but it hasn't been anything substantial. And I think it also comes down to the fact that I think Ange just trusts a certain amount of players to play these roles. And there's also an emphasis on getting results, right? And it's nothing against Archie Gray, but is this a time right now in the season, still in the context of Europa and still in the context of trying to get results in the league, where that's not necessarily feasible? This, like, Archie Gray getting starts in the midfield, that seems to be like the last 2 or 3 games of the season when everything has already been essentially finalized for this team for this year. As far as starting.
So you're sort of saying we don't really have we don't have the luxury of kind of bedding him in any more than he's already kind of going to be bedded.
I mean,
could maybe at a half, as a halftime substitution, like if Spurs come out on Sunday and get 2 goals within the confines of the first 45 minutes, where they actually have a little bit of a lead, can I see him coming on for the second 45? 100%. That actually makes sense, because you actually at that point you have the luxury of resting players for Thursday. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, could you see a front three? Could you see a front three of Mikey Moore, Tell as the 9, and Odobert? Because that rumour about Odobert being injured was a load of BS, apparently, having a slight strain and all that. So Ange picked the team he wanted to pick. So he picked Johnson over him because of his goals, I suppose.
Can you, knowing that Dominic Solanke is healthy and available, do you see him starting anybody else but him at the 9 on Sunday? Knowing that there's still I understand, you look at the last 2 matches, he's played 85 minutes and 85 minutes, so he's played a lot of football in a small period of time. But when you look at things, do you see him starting?
No.
A Matisse Tell or a Dane Scarlett or Richarlison, knowing Richarlison can't even play a half at this point. So it's I would probably just assume we're going to see Solanke.
Well, I think the way I look at it, even if we were to go out against Frankfurt and have them games left, when are you going to play Mikey Moore? When are we going to see Tell produce the form when I've seen it on the left on YouTube videos? When are we going to see that? So if you're not going to play him in a game against Wolves, which is meaningless, don't get me wrong, I want to win every game, but this is an opportunity to give them youngsters a chance. It's a good chance you could play Mikey Moore on the left, right? You can play Odobert on the right, and then you've got an option in the middle. You could see how long Richarlison lasts. You can always bring Scarlett, or you can always have Tell through the middle. So you've got 3 options through the middle, and you've got 2 wingers. So, and even with the option of playing Tell on the wing as well, on one of the wings, So you could, through those 5, you can rotate them a bit. The only 2 through the centre you've really got is Richie and Scarlett. Scarlett should be fit for 90 minutes.
I agree with that.
You could start Richarlison till he ran out of gas, right? If he's not going to play on Thursday, it's not so critical. Then you could start Scarlett. I mean, like,
I look at this. From the choices that you just put out there, Adrian. I personally would like to see Odegaard on the left. I just think he's a better left winger than a righter. Than a righty. I think his skill set and his tendencies as a winger work better on the left than the right. He's still very good on the right. And then conversely, I think Mikey Moore is a little bit better on the right than he is at the left. And I completely agree with you. Like it does seem like a match where you can give those guys run. But knowing how Ange prefers to use Matisse Tell, he likes Matisse Tell playing centrally.
Yeah. Well, and most you go back to days when many a wing has been converted to a front striker or a centre forward. I mean, like.
So by the way, you think the Odegaard report was rubbish? You don't think
it was
there was
rubbish?
anything?
It was rubbish. It was that Ange said he's not been injured. He hasn't got no strain or nothing. He said it in his press conference, and I posted the videos in the WhatsApp groups and everywhere. But I posted showed. He said no. They're talking about a leak at the club and all that. And then we had quite a few in the chat today going on about the leak. Who is it? Naming different people. Well, to me, when you get leaks, it's usually someone who's disaffected, disenchanted. And then if I'm looking for someone, I'd look for someone who's not getting regular game time.
But the reason why I asked that,
usually happy. They might question.
The reason why I asked, because he was an unused sub against Frankfurt, right? And so that lead me to ask that question. Well, wait a second. Was there a slight tweak and just being a little bit more cautious to keep him out? Maybe for a Sunday, because you would just assume that if it was complete horseshit, that we would have seen him in some point against Frankfurt.
I thought it was actually a tweak. I thought that it had been confirmed, but I guess not. I'm not sure.
No, Anne said no. So obviously Johnson kept his place for the 2 goals. Now it may be that he might be saving Odegaard for Thursday. We don't know, or he might play him. He might play him tomorrow because you've got to tell him Mikey Moore you can play on the wings with Scarlett or Richarlison through the middle. Play one of them till if you start Richarlison, play him. If he's knackered, you take him off when he's knackered. Then you give. When are you going to play these players? I like Scarlett. I watched him as a 17-year-old. He's 20 now. He's always scored goals wherever he's been, and he always scores goals for England. But when he's been on loan at Ipswich, they got him promoted. He didn't get no game time. For Oxford, I think he got about 4 goals in 20 or something. But he was, he wasn't getting the game time. But when say strikers don't look good, all the loans Harry Kane come. Van der Vaart said he's shit. And look where we ended up with. So it's hard to tell if they're going to kick on. So I think Ange has got options. I think his worst selection Sunday is going to be in midfield.
Right.
What is he going to pick? Because if Decky's not going to be given a half, and I think Decky's fit. He's naturally fit anyways. And he's fit. And he said, I might not be ready and all that. I wouldn't be surprised if Decky's named in that squad on Sunday. If he's named, he's going to get game time because Ange would love to play him on Thursday. And the only way he's going to find out is by playing him. If he ain't fit for Thursday now, then he might as well not be fit for Thursday after playing Sunday.
Well, yeah, that's the report is that he's going to be available for the second leg in Germany, right? So you would assume that he's going to be in the matchday squad to at least get 30 minutes. In some form or fashion, just to get him back on the bench.
You got to see 100%. A bit more than in training. Obviously, he's a bit away and all that. Really, well, give him the second half or start him till he's knackered. See if this is the other thing. You can play a play. You think, he might only get half hour on his legs, but what if you start him? He lasts an hour. Then take him.
What if he doesn't know?
Well, you would only want to play him from our max anyway. If you wanted to play him on Thursday as well.
Correct.
So you might only want to play half, right? So I'm just speculating and throwing it out.
I know.
I don't know.
It's just very unusual. I can't remember the last time that a player got subbed in the first half that wasn't an injury or a monumental cock up when it came to the strategy, and a team was already 2-0, 3-0 down.
Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Doggy will start, and what you know about Thursday, that Porro and Spence will both play a part in that game.
Mm-hmm.
They will both.
I've never understood
because
go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Steve. Especially if we need a goal and all that, they're definitely going to play a part. So as we're away, you might start with Spence and you Doggy, and if we really need a goal later on, come on with Porro. I mean, that's what I would do, but I don't know what Ange would do. I mean, because you Doggies look good.
I've never understood the thought process behind saving certain players for the last 30 minutes or 40 minutes of the game, especially if especially if it's a match where you're chasing early goals and trying to set the tone, right? You probably would think you'd want your best 11 on the field in order to accomplish that, right? So you're absolutely right. If there's a situation where they get knackered at the 50th or 55th minute, you can always make that substitution knowing that you're protecting a 2-goal lead anyway. Right. So I've never understood the psychology. And Ange does this quite a bit where, like, when he's bringing players back, well, they're in the match day squads, they're fit enough to be in the match day squad. So why wouldn't you start them? What's the purpose of bringing in a guy in the 60th minute if you're chasing you're chasing a goal? You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, I get your point. I get your point.
Another thing I thought about, Udogie needs the game time. You play him against Wolves on the left, right? And then you play Gray at right back and rest Spence and Porro and rest them for Thursday.
See, in the last 10 minutes,
got to be given game time.
In the last 10 minutes, you've rested our entire back four, Adrian.
Well, no, I'm saying Romero can play with Davis, and I haven't got no problems with that.
All right.
It's just Vicaro's. So let's do it then. Who do you think's going to be our centre backs? We know Vicaro's going to be in goal, right? Because Kinski's not in the squad. There's only Austin in the squad with him. So because we left out Dragerson.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Go on. I'll tell you what, Steve. Yeah, you do your squad. I'll do mine. Go on.
All right. I think we're going to see a back four to start. Now, this could definitely change at the half, depending on where we sit at the half. Maybe a little bit later. But I actually do see a back four of Spence, Van de Ven, Romero, and Porro to start. Now, whether or not that, I don't know how you guys feel about that. But again, I just think Ange is kind of in a no-win situation where he has to put his best lineups forward. Again, he wants to be in a position where they go into the half with a lead. And I just don't think he's in a situation where he can take any team for granted at this point. And I keep hearing this. Well, it's only just Wolves, and it's like, yeah, but they're also a team that has won 3 in a row and are actually coming into this match on form as well too. And it's not a team that you can take for granted. Oda Berlik was Ange setting a trap. That's pretty good. My midfield 3. Maybe I can see a little rotation here, but I'm actually going to say it's going to be Madison, Sarr, and Betancourt, and my attacking 3 is going to I can see this and Son coming off a little bit earlier for a little extra rest, but I can see it's going to be Sonny, Solanke, and then Odebear on the right.
Son, Solanke, and Odebear on the right.
Yeah.
Not me.
Well, yeah. I mean, as Drew just said,
I'm going to go
Udogie. That's 5 minutes.
Udogie,
yeah, right.
Udogie, Davies, Romero, and Spence. Man, I don't know. Yeah. So midfield, Basuma gets a game. Basuma, Gray.
I can see Basuma coming in at some point. I don't know if Ange even trusts Basuma at this point anymore.
Well, Basuma, Gray. Who's the third one? The only choice really. Yeah, Basuma, Gray, and Sarr. I would actually. It's an away game, so you'd have Sarr and Gray at the back and give Basuma license to go forward. Then up front, like I said, I want Mikey Moore to get a game. He can play on the left or right, anywhere in the front. Well, he could play anywhere in the front six, as far as I'm concerned. What I've seen of him, so yeah, Mikey Moore.
Was Mikey Moore in the match day squad on Thursday?
Yeah.
Was he? Okay.
Moore on the left, Odebert on the right.
Right. Okay.
And I would start Richarlison. See how long see what he's got in his legs. Because we got Scarlett. I mean, and that's still a strong team. He's certainly very creative with Mikey Moore on there and whatever. Might lose a bit of creative in midfield. But if Decky was anywhere near fit, I would be starting him. Just to
you have a double
game time in his legs.
So you have a double pivot of two holding midfielders in Gray and you said it was Gray and Sarr with Basuma almost effectively playing that center attacker.
Yeah, Gray playing a bit more deeper because Sarr is more of an 8 box to box. So, yeah, it really is 6 with 2 8s, really.
Correct.
So that would be it. And up front, Mikey Moore, he can make things happen. Odebert's on the ball at the front, and I would play. Angie said there will be changes for Wolves, but we knew that anyway, right? Son and Maddison are going to be rested. I mean, if Maddison got injured and we went out there, I mean, as much as some fans critique him a bit harshly, like they do most players, I mean, Son and Maddison have to be rested, don't they? And like Bentancur's played a few games regularly now.
With your 11, with heavy rotation, how do you deploy Matisse Tell?
Well, it's like there'll be the subs bench, won't there? There'll be opportunity for Tell to come on.
Well, no, what I'm asking is like if he's first off the bench, is he coming in playing the wings, or do you have him centrally?
Well, Tell's fit, so he might start as the number 9 because we know he's fit for 90 minutes. So Tell might start as the number 9 and Richie might come on a sub or Scarlett. Because, look, are we buying this player or not? He hasn't shown enough for us to buy him yet, is he? He's not.
Right.
Got a couple of goals. He's got a penalty in that goal at Villa, right? He obviously wanted the penalty, which shows he's keen and up for it. So I think the kid's got a very good attitude. But you're not paying that sort of money.
I think, I think people have gotten caught up in the fact that he wasn't what we really, really were screaming out for when we got him, because we really, really wanted oven ready. And then he comes in and it's like, well, he's going to take a while to hit the ground running. I don't know how many people realise that he wasn't getting any game time at Bayern either.
100%.
Like, these are his first substantial minutes of the entire season. So it stands to reason that it was going to take him a little bit more than a couple of games to get up to speed. So, I don't know. I've got a feeling, because I feel like, I get what you're saying about if they're fit, start them and just see how long they've got. I'm just cautious of the fact that Richarlison has already suffered greatly with injuries, and I just don't know how much his confidence would do him if he was have to be pulled off in the first half. So just based on that and the fact that I've got a feeling Solanke really needs to find some sort of form, I can't help but think Solanke's going to start and at least get the first 45 minutes to an hour.
Look, I'm not saying you're not right. I think on reflection, I would start Tell. I would start Tell.
I wouldn't be against
we need to see more from him. So he needs to be given game time. And most of the league games we've got the rest of the season, I'm not saying they're throwaways, but they are games where we're not challenging for a league position for Europe. So you've got the opportunity to blood the young players.
I would be quite excited if there was a front three of Moore, Tell and Solanke, or some sort of derivative of that. Like if the two youngsters were in there, I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. I've got a feeling Romero's going to play. I've got a feeling the back four is going to be Porro, Romero, Davies, or Gray, and Spence. And then I think it's going to be Sarr. I think Bentenko is going to get another start because I think, again, he's one that if he's got it in his legs, he hasn't played a huge amount of football. I could see him getting a start again as well. I could see Ange trying to go for
it. As much as I want Basuma out of this club, I see Basuma starting.
Yeah.
Well, the only way certain players are going to get back their sharpness and get back to the levels that a lot of us think that they can be, the only way that happens is if they get minutes. And I agree with you, Drew. That's why I think that we're going to see Solanke. I think he's got the motor. I think he's got the motor to handle the minutes. That's the first thing. But it's also eventually that that sharpness of what we saw pre-injury. Maybe I'm foolish, but I think that comes back by the end of the season. But that only happens if he's continuously playing. But I understand where you're at, Adrian, and considering the injury history with this team, it would actually just take the wind out of the sails if one of these guys gets injured in a game like Wolves. You know what I mean? It effectively sinks Europa at this point. But that being said, it's like Ange is in a position where he's damned if he does, and damned if he doesn't at this point.
Yeah, I think VDV's definitely rested. Bergwell's rested. Son and Solanke. I mean, you've got Solanke starting. Fair enough. He may well start.
Well, this is going to be the run. Obviously, after Wolves, we got Frankfurt, then the Forest game at home. That's going to be a tough one.
That's a Monday now. I think that's a Monday, isn't it? A bank holiday Monday. I think when I put these up, it's before they've changed a lot of the dates. So,
gotcha. Obviously,
because I'll alter that if that's the case. I mean,
obviously, got to go away to Liverpool, and then away at West Ham, home to Palace, away to Villa, and I think Brighton. I think that's a home game, but don't quote me on it.
Yeah, we already played Brighton once earlier this season when we coughed up a 2-goal halftime lead there.
That's right, exactly. That's right. So yeah, that will be the home game. Man, I'd love to. I keep on saying I think we can go unbeaten for the rest of the season, but I really think we can do it this time, boys.
It's Monday the 21st, the Forest game, so I'll alter that.
All right, so here's the thing. All right, we advance in the second leg against Frankfurt.
Okay.
We draw because we're at home against Forest. We draw against Forest.
Yeah.
We lose at Anfield because it's Anfield, and we're just terrible there historically.
Uh-huh.
We beat West Ham because, well, quite frankly, it's West Ham.
Right.
And then what was the other one? What was the other? Oh, yeah. We beat Crystal Palace at home. We beat Villa away. And then we draw against Brighton to end the season at home.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Where do the...
Let's happy clap, everyone.
Yeah, does any idea where the semi-finals fit in amongst all this if we get through?
Oh, isn't well, hold on real quick. Isn't Lazio down?
Lazio, they've got they 2-0 down against Bodo Glimt. But,
there you go.
Yeah, but so we're in the quarters, right? So you got the semis and then you got the final. So where do the semis pop up? Because the semis obviously pop up between some of these, don't they? Because this is right until the end of the season.
Right. So
I guess that's probably
right. So it's Bodo Lazio is down 0-2, and Lyon came back with the last minute goal against United. So that aggregates 2-2. And Rangers and Athletic Club went scoreless in the first one. So that's still 0-0.
Well, you could see Lazio pulling 2 goals back. That game could go to penalties.
At home, yeah. It's super tight. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there could be a half decent. As I say, I'm still going unbeaten. At some point, I'm going to be proven right, even if it's just winning the last game.
And West Ham away, right? You've got to look at it as well. They're just below us. They're not getting Europe.
Right.
So they might have the deck chairs out, the cheese and wine party. They might not be interested. Palace I think they might be able to qualify. I'm not sure if they can qualify
I
from
like
Europe.
Crystal Palace.
Right, so they might have the deck chairs out as well. Villa, we know they're challenging and Villa, they're in the unless they lose to PSG and go out next week, they've got to score at least 2, haven't they? To take it a penalty.
Okay, so the first
Palace
leg
sitting in 11th right now. Yeah, so I think Palace is sitting in 11th. Where's Villa?
First leg semi-final is the first.
7th.
Yeah, so Wolves
the semi-finals for the Europa League are on the 1st and the 8th of May.
Mm-hmm.
So that would cause a couple of these to end up probably moving. I think that Saturday game would become a Sunday.
I think the European finals usually follow the FA Cup finals, don't they?
Yeah. So the Saturday, the West Ham Saturday, May 3rd, that would end up being a Sunday if we got through, and the Saturday, May 10th against Palace would end up being moved. Yeah. Although, depending on what they've got going on, are they in anything else? No, probably not.
I don't. I believe that West Ham and Palace aren't in any.
No, Palace are still in. Palace are still in the FA Cup.
Are they the FA? Yeah, there you go. That's right.
I think they might be, because didn't Eze put on a bit of a wonder show? Yeah. So that might end up being moved to like a midweek or something weird, depending on what the FA Cup says. But anyway, I guess now we're starting to talk about the movement of fixtures in case other fixtures go one way or the other. Probably means that our time's up. I've got to actually head off and do some bits. So I'm going to ask Adrian if you'd like to. You want to plug the channel and just let everybody know what you've got going on.
60 of you viewing us now. I mean, if you like our content at Spurs Diehards TTID, please subscribe to the channel, give the videos a thumbs up, and leave a comment. Our shows go out on every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, every Sunday at 9 o'clock, and every Friday at 10 o'clock. That's to support our American friends on with us now, fellow admin Drew and Steve here. So if you like what we like our content, spread the word, guys. Let people know. We do have a Facebook channel for those that use Facebook. I don't blame those that don't. There's 14,500, but that's been going since the stadium opened in 2019. But most of them won't have nothing to do with like other forms of social media. We do have a Facebook page of nearly 300, and we have a Twitter, XCOM, 3,200 and that. It's only been going about a year. So where we are low on numbers is actually here. So we would like more subscribers, because it makes us feel valued for all the content we bring out to you guys. We pride ourselves on being a discerning group of Spurs fans, a mature and sensible channel, right? That's what you get here. We will debate, what needs to be debated, and if it's times when it's toxic or the club have made a PR blunder, we will be on it as well. But we try to give a balanced perspective on all things Spurs. Yeah, and with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone in the chat. I want to thank everyone that's viewing, and especially big up to all you guys that can be bothered to watch us on playback. Big up to you all, and thanks again. Back to you, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Adrian. Steve, thank you very much again for coming over. It's been great to have you the last few weeks, and long may it continue. We've got the banner down here at Stateside Footy 27. Yeah. Let the crowd and everybody know what you got going on and what's coming up on the channel.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to thank you guys for the hospitality. I really enjoy your conversation. I think you guys are sharp. And it's been a pleasure being able to come on here the last couple of Fridays, and hopefully it continues. Same thing with either both of you, Drew or Adrian. If you want to pop on the channel, you're more than welcome to. And I would be very accommodated to have both of you on.
Yeah, I'm usually available most times, Steve. All you got to do is contact me through the WhatsApp group or Drew.
I got you, man. I got you. Tomorrow morning, as Dave mentioned before he took off, Dave Harris of the Irish Hospital will be on tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock UK time. along with YouTube legend himself, Dermatron. For all those that know Derma, he's a great dude. He'll be on tomorrow as well too. You can and then tomorrow night on the channel we have an MLS live stream, Seattle Sounders versus FC Dallas, for all the American viewers out there that enjoy good old fashioned American Major League Soccer. So definitely check that out. And of course, you can also catch me on THFC TID. The Dermatron's channel as well too, is we're doing a lot of collaborative work over there as well too.
Do you have many American subscribers, Steve?
I do. I have it's my channel's only been around not even a year now. So it came on, I want to say, last October, and right when Pochettino was hired for the U.S. men's national team, and so from that point to now, we just eclipsed 200 subscribers, and it's growing. And
nice. Congratulations!
I have a self-interest. I've got a self-interest in this as well, because we've been trying to do the late shows on the Friday to sort of get it more Canada and Americanized, to get more subscribers from your side of the pond, as we say, and possibly even some that it suits the extra forward, suits some Australians or those in the subcontinent below the equator. So if you've got any mature and sensible guests that you think might be of value to our subscriber, and you can come on with them when Drew does his Friday shows,
Absolutely.
All right, well, yeah, we can certainly talk more about that backstage, Adrian. But I just want to thank you, as always, Adrian, for being my wonderful co-host. I want to thank Steve for coming on and sharing his wonderful insight. I want to thank everybody in the chat, to all the regulars that have come on and participated. Do remember to smash a like on the way out, and please do subscribe. And with that, I will bid you adieu, and we will see you next week.